Well, hello everyone. I hear mics going off and on. I assume Prince Heather will be with us in a moment, although she seems to be back in listener now. Will is already stuffing the nest, and we have a lot to talk about tonight, so we'll get going soon. There's Prince. Prince, hi there. Are you going to do our timestamp for us? Or are you still busy with other stuff? Oh, okay,
I
good.
just need to double check one thing. Okay, I'm good. I'm good. I just need one more little dot. There we go. I sent that now, and now I can pull up the stuff to do.
Thank you, darling. Yeah, there are a number of things that need to be done when the space still starts up that make my life doing the podcast much easier. So I'm quite happy for
Make
Prince
your
Heather.
life easier?
Yes.
Make our lives easier.
Well, our lives easier. This is right. But of course, I'm mostly concerned about my life,
Well, of course.
Anyway.
Yes, making your life easier is my goal. Which is I should tease you. I should tease you right now, which is why I was editing a podcast at 4 a.m. Just
Yes. Well,
not a big deal.
No, you do a yeoman's job with the podcast too. We've got quite a good team going here now.
We do. It's sort of interesting. Anyway, it is a Tuesday, January 6th in much of the world, but not in all of the world. So we're going to check out what time it is where. And we always start in the UK where it is 1:01 a.m. in Slap Bottom, UK. It is 1:01 a.m. That was just the first thing that came up in my mind, up of my eyesight. And then I need glasses or something. I don't know. Anyway, in Wankdorf at Wankdorf Stadium in Switzerland, it is currently 2:02 a.m. And in very big sheep pen, Ukraine, it is 3:02 a.m. And in the Cockman Bluff, Australia, the Workers' Paradise, it is 9:02 a.m. On the Kinki Expressway in the Osaka, Japan area, it is 10:02 a.m. And in let's see, I have to go for a knob. In Prominent Knob today, it is 11:32 p.m. Those people are off by half an hour and they freak me out. Man, I can't believe I actually like somebody who lives in such a condition. Anyway, um, sorry, I cracked myself up. In Jackass Flat, Australia, it is 12:03 p.m. Then we are going to regress back to Monday, January 5th, where in Spread Eagle Bay, which is exactly 2 kilometers south of Dildo, Newfoundland and Labrador, it is 9:33 p.m. because, well, it's just because it's silicone doesn't mean it totally is. In Climax, Michigan, it is 8:03 p.m. In Toadsuck, Arkansas, it is 7:03 p.m. In Hooker, Oklahoma, no, sorry, bad. Beaver Creek, Colorado, it is 6:04 p.m. And in Tillicum, Washington, Till I Come is how it is spelled. It is 5:04 p.m. I think that's why it ended up on the list. And in Beaver, Alaska, it is 4:04 p.m. Alaska, where Sarah Palin can see Russia from her house. And that is our timestamp for the day, or at least for this segment. And I'll try to remember to do something different tonight when I do it a little bit later my time. So, Robin and Will, you accidental Ukrainians, how are you today?
Well, I'm hanging in there. I think William is still stuffing our nest, as is his wont. We've got quite a bunch of stuff up there already. Yeah, it's I
No,
can't.
I'm just sitting here aghast that both of you are talking about servicing your own needs when I'm sitting right here, and both of you, who's the priority.
Yeah, right.
yes, Nest is partially stuffed. We don't, and I do have I can do the news summary, and we also then want to talk about, as it is Accidental Ukrainian, things about Ukrainian culture and language and travel and all that sort of stuff. And I, like you, last weekend, someone was absolutely freaked out that I have been traveling to Ukraine and will be traveling to Ukraine in the near future. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about that too, aren't we, Rob?
Yes, we are. Yes, and I also had somebody who cornered me on Friday night say, "Why are you going to Ukraine? I just saw the news this week." So yeah, we continue to horrify and fascinate our acquaintances, but we keep on going, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to get there and live to tell the tale. And I'm not talking about the war; I'm talking about the physically what you can go through trying to get in country now, because you can certainly not fly to Ivano-Frankivsk International Airport at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the funny part is that getting in is actually easier than getting out.
Yes, that's right. Sometimes, for we, who knows why? Sometimes the Polish border gets to be very, very slow. I guess they want to make sure that Ukraine gets to keep as many people as they can. But yeah, getting out is well, we'll talk about it later. And there are ways. I think Will and I and some other people who've gone have had some experiences that we can share with you, so that you don't have to go through some of our learning experiences, I hope.
Yeah, and then I had hoped to have a couple of things that I pulled up from earlier, but I just can't find them. The organization system I've got for saving interesting things about Ukraine requires me to mine through for a long time on things. But I have a couple of things on links for people on volunteering in Ukraine. And some ideas on that that I've come up with. That I ran across talking to people like Vatnik Soup, in who's on the ground in Kiev and has been for a long time, and works in a volunteer organization there that I visited. Tracy SBU fella and I have helped some other people go over there and find volunteering roles, and then there's also the information on, if you're traveling to Ukraine and you want to bring some stuff for people, the way to find some of the best of that. But I don't have any of those right on hand. I'll keep looking for them as we're talking and see if I can pull them up. Yeah. So where would you like to start? Any of that, or do you want to talk about the news in the last 14 hours?
Well, I think we should start with the news, because a lot has been going on in the last few days, and then we'll find some time near the end for some of our travel tips.
Fair enough. Then to start that off, Uh, the details are in on what was hit yesterday, drone strike wise, and in the last 14 hours. But to follow up from yesterday's strikes, I believe the Yelets battery factory in is still on fire. So that's good news, because that produces dry and wet cell batteries. It's one of the biggest battery manufacturers in Russia, and that will be important because it's way over in the west side of the country, where they obviously use a lot of batteries. So that's good that is still on fire. We also see some drone strikes that have arrived in Penza, near where the bearing manufacturer is in Penza, which is good news, because you love to hear things like that going out of a service. And also some action in Tver, which we don't know what is hit yet. And another night of drone and like balloon. I think they're being launched from inside Russia. There are some things that look like a balloon floating up around toward Moscow to test. I think they're testing the air defense systems around there, or trying to saturate and cause Russia to have to expend a lot of air defense assets on things which they don't fully intend to reach their goal, but if they do, good enough. But one thing it certainly does is shuts down the airports in Russia, and in Moscow in particular. And we have again, after yesterday's 200 flight cancellations, we have the Russian major airports, Sheremetyevo, Domodedovo, Vnukovo, and Zhukovsky, all closed in again, not accepting or sending flights, which is, and it's really important this time of year, Robin, because Russia still really focuses on the 7th of January as their Christmas, and the travel around this time of year in and out of the big cities it's one of their heaviest times of year. You wouldn't think so. You'd think it'd be summertime, but in fact, some of the biggest travel times of the year in Russia are right around this holiday in early January. They're not. There's a lot of flights shut down, so a lot of people are going to be informed that Russia is at war.
Yeah, there's one thing I was surprised about this year, Will. I think this is the first year that they haven't tried, the Russians haven't tried to float some kind of a Christmas truce, meaning that they keep on bombing the hell out of Ukraine, but somehow Ukraine's supposed to leave off for a couple of days. They didn't even bother to bring that up this year.
No, they didn't, because they totally rejected any Christmas truce on the other side verbally this year without just ignoring it. So that would have been the height of hypocrisy, which is really surprising on why they didn't do it then, I guess. But I think the communications in Russia, internally and externally, are a little bit coming apart. I mean, I'd have to, you have to point to the UN representatives' condemnation of the United States' attack on Venezuela yesterday. I mean, it's really low energy. It's this is a guy who's usually frothing at the mouth. It gives a forceful presentation at the UN, and I mean, it's a sleeper. They're really mailing it in, like they don't even believe the message at all at this point.
Well, as one of our colleagues in the back channel said, irony has been brought out back and shot a long time ago.
Yeah, irony was drug out back and put a bullet in ages ago. So yesterday's announcement to follow up on the other replacements in the government sections is, of course, that Yevhen Kamara, the Major General from SBU Alpha, has been named the head of the SBU. Because he was able to get the resignation of Yamaluk, which and we discussed it yesterday afternoon. There's a bit of Ukrainian internal politics going on here as well, but I'll still stick with. And I've been reading a lot of the Ukrainian folks' writings, because it's their area, they understand it, I don't. But reading it from the outside, I'm going to still stick with my original assessment that the replacements at Ministry of Defense, in the president's office, with both Pislo and Budanov going in there, Kislitsa going in, the changes that they're making to me look like they're tooling up to win the war, rather than some big political machinations going on. But who knows? The idea that he's putting Budanov in there to stifle his possibility of being in power later on. I don't know about any of that, but the competence. If this is what I had said it is, which looks like a very good meritocracy based reshuffle. The people that they put in place, they're not Fox News hosts. These are folks with long bodies of experience, and when they're replacing somebody, they're putting in somebody who's just as competent and comes from a good pedigree of background too, Robin.
Yeah, that certainly is true. The business of Maliuk, though, it's I find very interesting, because I read two different articles, insider articles, and we'll get to True in a minute, who may know, probably knows more about this than I do. But one of them said that he was being replaced because he refused to take a side in the whole anti-corruption, the NABU, that business of when they changed the law about NABU. That one side said, one article said he didn't take a stand, so therefore he's being axed. The other part said that he didn't support Yermak, and that then this is payback. So there are two articles saying exactly the opposite thing. So it was sort of interesting. I suspect there is. I mean, my feeling is there is some political machinations going on, but at the same time, good, competent people are being swapped in. So it's it maybe both. Back to you, Will, and then I think we should see what True has to say.
Yeah, let's go to True now before we finish the news summary, because all these things are related. Go ahead, True.
Hi guys. Ukrainian inside things. Ukrainians are so confused. Why do you shuffle when you have normal system that is working? SBU was effective. I don't know why they changed Maluk. The best guess, the best case scenario is that he had to do a lot of proper work as the head of SBU, and he's such a good spy that he can manage this special project and make it faster and better. I think Budanov is on the right place. And who is this Khmara? Nobody knows. We're all just confused. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
Kamara, obviously, is the head of SBU Alpha. He's a quiet guy. He doesn't has a big profile, and that's the other point that somebody raised. That I don't know if it's true or not, of course, but one of the newspapers raised the issue that Maliuk was building kind of a profile for himself, and that maybe there's some interest in stifling that. But look, I think the proof will be in what happens as we go forward. And the other thing that will be very telling is where Maliuk ends up, right? Because he's not being. It doesn't look like, as far as what he said he remains in the SBU system to implement world-class asymmetric special operations. So I like to look at where folks go after. And if he's not totally sent to the wilderness, I'm going to stick with my meritocracy tooling up to win the war thing, because the evidence that's there outside all the political machinations are you've got a guy who's got a lot of expertise in the Ministry of Defense in setting up contracts, digitalization, making things efficient, and you've got a head and deputy of the president's office now who are directly tied in with the war effort and the intelligence effort, which is going to be incredibly important going through the end of this war, knowing that Russia doesn't have conventional capabilities like it used to, but it is certainly very cunning and very cornered like a rat, and will use the strengths that it's got. So I personally can't think of better head of the presidential office to be across the war effort, but also across the securing the security future of Ukraine than Budanov. And he's got a deputy that comes directly out of the military, who's from the front line. So this looks like a war cabinet to me, but we'll just see how it goes.
And the one last thing that I think is a very positive thing is Yermak seems to finally have been put decidedly to the side. He's been an issue for a long time, and a lot of it was smoke, but smoke and fire. I personally am much more comfortable that he is not in the middle of anything anymore. I think he caused a lot of dissension along with other things. But let's go over to Lexicon and see what she has to say.
Yeah, I was listening to Georgie from Ukraine Matters. He thinks a lot of muck is being stirred up by Ukrainska Pravda that he considers a pretty odd publication. that never misses an opportunity to sling some mud at Zelensky. But he did quote Zelensky himself, who said that because of Malyuk's success with these brilliant operations like Spiderweb and whatever that he's masterminded, that he wants him to focus on this kind of thing, because to win this war, and definitely this is the theme in all of these of this reshuffle, Ukraine needs to focus on asymmetrical
So
action.
you're saying take him out of the administrative role and free up
Yeah,
some of his time for more special
You
operations.
know,
for more of
the
this
problem with this
creative.
though is this all sounds a little bit like after the fact. He was demoted. I mean, the bottom line is he was demoted from
Malyuk?
his position. Malyuk, yeah.
Well, we don't know yet. What is his position named?
Well, we know he's no longer the head of SBU. He's now in a subordinate role in SBU somewhere. I think it may be a good fit and everything, but I think that some of these explanations are a little bit too facile because he was, he was in a position of power and he's been now put to the side to some extent.
Well, that's interesting. Maybe. Um, Zelensky always has an explanation, doesn't he? Well, let's hope that he actually is focusing on this stuff and doesn't have to do admin, because I'd sure prefer that job myself. But we'll have to see. Georgie thought it was important to put such worries to rest, and he also thought that he'd give a piece of his mind to us about Ukrainska Pravda, not his favorite publication, apparently.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, because they're a gadfly, and Ukrainska Pravda has been in its entire existence has been the organization that makes those in power uncomfortable. So it's not surprising that they would not. I mean, if they were too popular with the administration, I'd worry about them anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. Additional appointments in addition to this war cabinet. I can't think of a better person to send to negotiations than Sergei Kislitsa, who has done a superb job in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and now will be directly involved in for further discussions on negotiated settlements.
He of
And
the rapier tongue and wit.
Yeah, exactly. And then so in addition to 5 governors that have been replaced that are reported 2 days ago, the final appointment is an interesting one. It goes a long way to be a good ally of Ukraine because he's appointed Zelensky's appointed Chrystia Freeland as the economic development advisor, and she's Canadian. So, the Canadians are getting a look in government too. So, and they have been a very staunch supporter with delivery of material and not just words to Ukraine, unlike Australia, who's basically been words and not much delivery of stuff,
Well,
whereas
until O'Donnell
Canada's really
comes
stepped up.
in and kidnaps our prime minister and turns us into the 51st state. But so far, so good.
Yeah, and it is interesting, all this talk going around. Some of the very interesting things that I see going around in Ukraine, in relation to world events, is that are people that are coming out and the rah-rahs about what America can do and changing regime change and all that sort of stuff, and people saying that it's see, this is what happens. America's the country that enforces international law, not the UN, where this is what kept the world safe, and the Ukrainians rightly showing no, it's the it's the average Ukrainian soldier that is keeping the world safe for democracy right now, and the picture of those 2 guys that held a position for 4 months. Yeah, I'm not going to. I think it's silly to get into a lot of revising how things are going based on what the U.S. has done in Venezuela and all the unbelievably raucous, bold talk that's come out of the Mango Mussolini. I think we just stick to the knitting here, and the facts are The replacements of the people inside the Ukrainian government appear to be from the outside, merit-based, and a renewal. It looks to me like they're preparing to use the $45 billion loan guarantees they have each year, and the aid that they've got, and the foreign investment, and any donations they can get in from their real friends to push this toward victory, because Russia has never in its entire history, if you go back to 1,000 years to Ivan the Terrible, Russia has never been weaker than it is today relatively to the other things that are going on in the world. And Ukraine can finish them this year. And I think that's probably what they're pressing on doing, because the U.S. doesn't get a call to shots in Ukraine. These people are saying, "Oh, the U.S. could do whatever." Even the Russians are saying, "Yo, the U.S. ought to go in and overthrow Zelensky and fix this problem." It's not the problem. The people in Ukraine get to decide what happens in Ukraine, and at the end of the day, I think it'd be foolish for America to think that they are totally going to get to decide what happens in Venezuela without the will of the Venezuelan people being considered, and that way lies madness. Go ahead, Lexi.
Yeah, it's nice to go into Caracas when you've already cut a deal. Anyway, so that's what Putin wanted to do. He's got egg on his face today. Kremlin didn't know what to say. They're being somewhat restrained. But I just wanted to high five props to Jason J. Smart, because he loves to read the economic signals, the macro stuff. And I reposted his YouTube um, item episode today, because he said the market just gave, he does one of his, as he always does, it's all over for Putin kind of thing, but the market just gave the Kremlin a signal, a verdict, I mean, that it cannot appeal. And he's talking about the what do we call these long-term, we use the word, the secular impact of these of this low price doldrums that oil seems to be in. And he harkens back to from 86 on, when commodity prices, particularly oil, were low, and how Rand or the CIA or somebody was telling the American government that this was a really important signal that was going to be make times very hard for the Kremlin, and just sort of telling them, giving them a heads up. And he's doing the same kind of thing, because whichever way you slice it, Kremlin just cannot, Moscow cannot come back from this kind of situation. That's what's all around them. They're in the very murky waters of low oil prices, and it's for various reasons. It's Emirates fighting with the other guys, Saudi and so on. But this is not going to change for Putin, and this does not help him with this war. Back to you.
Yeah, that's true. This year is going to be a very, very bad testing year for Russia. There'll be challenges for Ukraine, no doubt. But I would rather bet on Ukraine's ascendancy, because there are no signs that Russia is going to be on the advance, especially. And the way the internal people are talking inside Russia, the amount of dooming that's going on now that Venezuela's lost over the money and everything like that. They are really coming to realize that, and I said it directly to one of my Vatnik pen pals, that Russia doesn't come to help any of its friends, because it can't. Ukraine has gutted them. And the person, to my surprise, actually said, yeah, that's actually what it looks like. So sometimes what it looked like is what it really is. The keep it simple, stupid, right? The obvious facts in front of you oftentimes are correct, and there's no need to read far too much into it. Interesting development here too is that the important things about Ukraine's development here and saving themselves in this war has been the development cycle. The key is cheaper weapons that can be developed quickly and be modified quickly based on feedback from the front. And I'll note that this wouldn't even be this would be a joke value before, but I think it's a real important number now that the European Commission has decided to allocate 15 million euros, which is nothing. Real, I mean, for the initial phase of development of a light multi-role combat aircraft with stealth elements. So what they're talking about is a probably even a turboprop driven or something light to basically a drone shooter downer, right? The drones coming in, and even if the opposition is using AWACS, won't really be able to find these slow light aircraft that are out there that can hunt your drones. And 15 million bucks you'd go, or 15 million euros normally you'd go, that's not even a news story. But this is where it's at. 15 million, you gave a Ukrainian 15 million euros, boom, you've got a drone factory and a very productive one. So I think this is Europe's indication that this is the way the world is going, and it's kind of smart. Lithuania has joined on to my plan from a year ago of allocating 0.25% of its GDP annually to assist Ukraine in the field of security and defense. This is the way, folks. A small amount of every country that's an ally of Ukraine, a small amount, and the amount they picked is exactly what I picked, and they did it probably for the reason I did. You take the full GDP of all the countries that are in the East European Union, and you take 0.25% of that, and that provides a value which is equivalent to or greater than the amount of money that Russia can allocate to its war each year and falling. And you put that on budget, and you just say, look, we're going to make sure that Ukraine has 100 billion euros every year until hell freezes over, because it's looking pretty cold in Russia. And if you put it on budget, you're not going to have to spend years 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, probably, because the powers that be inside Russia also read the foreign press, even though they say they don't. And the foreign intelligence services of Russia will be saying, we are facing an expenditure by Ukraine that is equivalent to or greater than ours every year for as long as budget forecasts go out. And we're literally not capable of winning with what we're doing now. So that will be, it's the message as much as it is the value of money that gets sent to Ukraine. This is why I urge every European country, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Canada, every one of us need to put Ukraine on budget, because the survival of liberal democracy is in all of our interests, and it should be on budget. Rant over. Follow up from the KISS poll the other day, KIIS Independent, that Ukraine, only 10% of Ukrainians believe that elections should be held before a ceasefire. So what a fresh breath of reality, and I'm feeling more Ukrainian every day with the thought that only 10% of the people in Ukraine thought it was reasonable to hold an election until a ceasefire is done. And why jump through a bunch of hurdles to try to hold one during a war? How about just stop the war and then we'll have elections, if that's the way to decide the future of Ukraine? That's so that is a. I honestly, even with all the political machinations going on in Ukraine, I think the Ukrainian press is getting this right better than the Western observers.
Yeah, and Ukrainians are very practical people too, and I mean, it just like you're saying, it makes one, that logistics would be impossible, and two, the likelihood of Russia monkeying with something and trying to corrupt the election in the middle of all this, that's a very big danger too. It really makes no sense.
Yeah, they cut immediately to the crux of the matter. How are the people in the occupied areas going to vote? What's Russia going to do? Are they going to target polling places? What about the Constitution? What about oversight? And why is this necessary now? Why, when polling, the polling that's regularly done by KISS and others, it demonstrates that the government still has vast amounts of support.
And there's
particularly
no.
because
So
when they do something controversial, the public comes out and screams about it, and they reverse it. It's a
yeah.
democracy that's functioning.
Exactly. I mean, then there's very little support there was no push inside Ukraine for having these elections now. Where did the whole idea that there have to be elections come from? That came right out of the
Putin.
Kremlin. Yeah, exactly. And he claims that this government is not legit. You know damn well if they had elections, he'd claim that the new government was not legit either. So what is the point? And the fact that Trump got on the bandwagon with this is neither here nor there. It's not up to the United States or anyone else to decide this. If Ukrainians are happy with this situation now, I mean that ought to be enough. I understand that Zelensky and others they're trying to they're making a point that they're willing to negotiate, but this is a non-starter. It really shouldn't be an issue.
Exactly, and that's what I said on the day. That they're saying, would we be willing to hold elections if A, B, and C? They go, yeah, we would. Go ahead. Let's go out and pretend we're working on the plans for holding an election, but there's no real plans to hold it because I'll remind you that we're now a week into what I think was the vague 3 weeks, a few weeks that Putin's going to have to evaluate the 20-point plan now. But it's dead silence. That's going to go through to the keeper with no further comment, whatever. But Trump won't mention it, Putin won't mention it, and I guarantee you the time will pass without a response from Russia because they did respond already. They did respond that no government not selected by them in Ukraine would they consider legitimate, and all the other stuff is they're not willing to compromise at all on their object. They're willing to negotiate the delivery of exactly what they want, and that's it. So uh, uh, I hope we're done having. I hope. Well, I feel sorry for Kislitsa because he's such good at it, but I hope we're done having negotiations about things which are absurd until the point in time where Russia says we can no longer carry out this war. We would like a ceasefire with no preconditions so that we can commence withdrawal from areas of Ukraine. That's where I think we're headed, and I think we can get there because there is a plan to victory. They do have money lined up now. They do have people in roles that well, they did before, but they've even got now. They've turbocharged what I think are people in roles that can deliver them victory and plan out victory and the security that follows. And I'm encouraged about the opportunity for 2026, provided we can find a way to solve the fiber optic drone problem and the glide bomb problem. And I've got the answer there, but it takes a lot of more effort from Ukraine's allies. In Russia, things continue to go bad with a major derailment in the Amur region over by Khabarovsk. A significant derailment there with 36 cars of freight derailing, overturning, spilling stuff. So this isn't a simple derailment that's going to take a couple of hours and a railway crew to get back online. This is a big pickup cleanup job. No explosions or damage. This is freight, but remember, this is 36 freight cars of material that the people in that region to the north of Khabarovsk, they need this stuff to survive in winter, and they're going to be waiting for 2 or 3 weeks additional wait to get any of the material that was on this train because it's going to require a massive cleanup. The month of December now completed. Magyar's birds are able or Magyar Brovdi has been able to announce that the final numbers are in, and in December 2025, they did manage to set a new record of Russians killed and units of equipment destroyed in December with 33,000 strikes, successful strikes on individuals and equipment by the unmanned services of Ukraine. So that is incredible. If they are capable of meeting their recruitment goals and getting to the additional people they want to add so that they can go to 10% of the forces of Ukraine, they could very well amount for half of all of the successful strikes in a year's time. And well done for that. It's they are picking apart. Well, essentially, what they're doing is they've still got infiltration, and you still got glide bombs, and you still got fiber optic drones that are hurting your supplies and keeping your people beleaguered. But the serious efforts by Russia to move forces in are being decimated by Ukrainian drones and the early use of DPICM. As long as Ukraine doesn't run out of bullets, this front line isn't going to move fast anywhere. And every time Russia tries to put together a significant fighting force, it's getting crushed before it even gets close to the zero line. Good news from Germany. I saw a video yesterday of a very large transformer, a 220 kVA transformer being moved in from Karlsruhe power plant in Germany, where they've probably moved away and no longer need this large thermal power plant. So like Lithuania is sending Ukraine replacement pieces of kit. And if you do look at that video, note how massive these transformers are. These are big things. People go, oh well, some transformers, they'll knock those up in a few months. Yeah, will they though? They will if you've got a factory that's not going to get struck by anything, that's dedicated and all set up to produce transformers and can rewind one of these really big bespoke pieces of equipment. But they're not like regular factories. These are individual builds for individual power plants based on a specific role that they're going to play. And the shape factor in which where they're going to fit into the power substations and power plants. So it's a big deal replacing these things, and so it's a great gift from Germany to get one of these big transformers from them. It's a nice gift. Here's really good news that the 412th OBRBS. This is the one of the separate detachments in Donetsk. Discovered and destroyed the 9S32 radar. This is the Tombstone radar from the S-300 air defense system. That's good news because that radar essentially means they won't be able to do the targeting for the S-300 system, even though they've still got the missiles and the launchers, but they don't have the targeting radar from it on top of the system anymore. I don't think that prevents them from using those missiles in short range surface to surface role, which they've done disappointingly. Again, Russia's gone back to that in the last couple of days and caused some pretty severe casualties in some shocking strikes in Kharkiv in particular, because when they fire those things in short range ballistic missile mode, they only have about 4 minutes of travel time, so you can't even get the alarms off before they're falling. So hunting and killing those S-300 systems is very important, and knocking out the radar first is definitely the way to go. So that's a good strike. Well done in Donetsk. And finally, the announcement that the Ukrainian Mirage fighter jets have now been equipped with the latest French Mica medium-range air-to-air missiles, which should provide them a capability, if they're close to the front, of interdicting the VKS, the S-334s, and the Russian planes if they venture too close to the front. So if hubris sets in amongst these pilots that are flying in with their glide bombs, it could turn ugly for them quickly. And let's hope that does happen, Robin.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I've been interested in is it seems to that the Ukrainian Air Force is operating much closer to the border than they used to be able to, which also gives an indication that the anti-aircraft capabilities of the Russians have been degraded. I read something interesting, which this may not be new to you, Will, but it was new to me. Poland is planning on giving Ukraine a number more of MiG-29s that they have
Yeah,
retired
the
from.
remainder of its entire fleet of
Right.
MiG-29.
And what I hadn't realized about these is apparently these MiGs are uh, functionally the same as the ones that the Ukrainian Air Force are already using. So basically, they can bring them across the border, stick a pilot in them, and they can use them almost immediately, which I hadn't realized. And they've been optimized to be able to use Western missiles and that kind of thing too. So this is a very important, and it's a very important a gift to Ukraine, and it's something that's going to be immediately usable, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting how they've adapted this, like they have all of the Frankensams and everything. The MiG-29 was originally an air superiority fighter, and they've modified it so that, and in fact, probably the Poles were doing it themselves, modified it to be able to carry JDAMs or hammers, and it's become a close air support plane delivery system if and when close air support can occur. And we've seen recently that the delivery of the AASM, the Hammer glide missiles from France, and the JDAM ERs are both able to be fixed on the MiG-29s. And it was interesting to find out that the transfer of the remainder of those that they plan to do are already set up to serve in that role. Yeah, it's great. They need more planes. The Ukraine, when they finish at the end of this war, they need at least 200 fourth generation fighters that are ready to keep the peace. It's a big. That is one of my big presses this year, that we've got to see more and more and more, whether they're flown by non-Ukrainian pilots or they're flown by Ukrainian pilots. We need to see more planes in the air so that Ukraine can establish air superiority over its own territory, at least, because if it can do that, we're a long way towards solving the fiber optic drone and the glide bomb problem.
I mean, yeah, and I mean, we're a long way to preventing a lot of deaths. This is something that should have. I mean, this in when the history of this war is told. One of the most horrific things about this will be the fact that the Western allies refused to provide air cover to Ukraine from the beginning of the war. This is something that the sooner they can get air superiority and protect the civilians is the better it will be.
Yeah, and the more we find out all along, and the more we find out about the condition of the Russian military, and the more we find out about international geopolitics, it is becoming more and more of an embarrassing shame than a nice to have. What Zelensky was asking for on day 2 to help close the skies above Ukraine was completely reasonable, completely doable, and would have possibly meant that this war would have been over already.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right, and it continues to be horrifying that we didn't do what would have been pretty relatively easy to do, would probably have not amounted to, it would not have caused it would not have caused allied deaths, probably, because we're talking about interdicting missiles and drones and things, and it could have been done.
Right, uh, and it's very possible that the fiber optic drone problem never would have come into being had they had that, and because had they had that, they wouldn't have been cut off from supply, and the Kursk offensive might have carried. They could potentially still hold some land inside Russia as a bargaining chip. So yeah, I mean, it's just but. So the best time to do this was day 2. The second best time is right now. The world can learn from the past 4 years that Ukraine isn't going to lose this war. They are, in fact, going to win this war. You do now start to see people talking about that. And as I said in the August of last year, if Ukraine gets 4 more months, if we go through the end of the year with Ukraine being able to carry out strategic strikes like it is doing inside Russia, the world will no longer be able to ignore that. And you will start to hear people talking in the mainstream media or even in Russia about the fact that Russia isn't going to win here. Ukraine is on the ascendancy, and maybe it's time to start heading for the exits. That has happened, and people are talking about it now, both in Russia. Russia is becoming. There's a couple of things that happened in the last day, which I find phenomenal inside Russia. The level of discussion, the level of doom that has started as a result of this Maduro operation in Venezuela. And the other thing is, Russia did a massive preparation for a major missile and drone strike 2 days ago that uh, that everybody, it all took off, and we're watching the takeoffs from Alina, and we're watching the preparations from moving planes over from Ukrainska, and all the planes are in the air, but then quite a lot of them didn't launch missiles and turned around and flew home. Why? I don't know. I don't know why they canceled that big launch or why they put on such a big spoof if they did. But remember that the deputy of the HOR a week ago said that up to 40% of the cruise missiles that are intended to launch during an attack by Russia, up to 40% of them fail to launch or fail to make it out of Russian airspace during the attack. And, maybe things are getting that bad for Russia. But whatever has happened, they prepared, they spent all the fuel, they spent all the effort to put up a major Tu-95, Tu-160, Tu-22 bombing raid, and then called it off the last second for no really good reason that we can see. And they just used the ballistics, ground-based ballistics, and the drones to do the attack that day.
Yeah, that was really odd. It will be interesting to see if we. I mean, it may be, they may be getting to the point that they're just not able to handle doing this anymore. I mean, we know that they are running out. They're running out certain supplies. I know I was seeing. I don't remember what it was now, but I was seeing. Was it the Shahids? There was something that was shot down recently, and it had been
And the
something that.
manufacturing date was 2
Right,
weeks ago.
right, exactly.
Yeah, they're essentially working out of production now on a number of things, cruise missiles and Shaheeds and that, and that means it's still going to be a tough year for Ukraine. But what it means is you'll never see a larger Russian military force attacking Ukraine than you have already. So it's not going to get bigger and badder than this. It's only going to go one direction from this. It's going to stay where it's at or fall off. And as it falls off, that'll present opportunities for Ukraine, as well as there isn't any indication whatever that Russia is getting better at stopping the Ukrainian strategic strikes. Russia has been shooting down a significant portion of the drones that Ukraine has been sending into Russia, but they're still having success, and they're producing more drones now. So, with the announcement that Firepoint is producing 200 a day of the FP1 and FP2 drones, that means the tempo of attacks that you see strategically on Russia will stay where they're at too. That they're able to keep up the attacks every day on Russia, just like Russia has been doing on Ukraine, and that's really impressive news from a country that started a war not prepared to attack anybody.
That's right, and the weapons industry in Ukraine is growing by leaps and bounds. There's foreign investment coming in. They're working together with companies like Rheinmetall and others, whereas Russia is by itself. I mean, they're getting some stuff from North Korea and from China, but they don't have that depth of support or whatever. They've got what they've got, and that's it. So it's the tide is definitely turning in the Ukrainian direction at this point.
But plus, they're not beggars anymore. This indication the other day that a UAE company was going to buy a significant portion of Firepoint, and the fact that they've got Mike Pompeo in there, and I've never liked or trusted Mike Pompeo all that much. That I start to worry about these foreign investors and foreign involvement, and we've seen Peter Thiel on the ground there. But because Ukraine has been so successful and its weapons industry is seen as so innovative and cutting edge, they can pick and choose a bit now. I note that Peter Thiel, sorry, not Peter Thiel, but the Eric Prince was over trying to buy into things, and he got no love because Ukraine can afford to be a little bit more discerning about who they get into partnership these days with, and also be concerned about where their technology proliferates to. I'm not excited at all about Ukraine sharing technology with a company in the UAE because the UAE is not a very good actor with regard to this war or other things regionally, frankly. And I think Ukraine should be holding its cards a little closer to its chest, finding people who've been real allies all along to allow investment from, the Danes, the Germans, all the companies you named, the people that have been there all the time. And I think they are smart. They're not beggars. And the appointment of a Canadian to their economic policy thing says, yeah, we've got a part of the diaspora here. We're going to pick this Canadian lady to be part of this economic policy team, but that's on merit, not on the fact that they're begging Canada for anything. And with all the talk of corruption inside Ukraine, I'm not seeing corruption inside Ukraine on the scale of what I've seen outside Ukraine, frankly. So, I mean, they're just not worse off than anyone else. And the good part about all this ascendancy is, to me, especially with like Budanov coming in, is the reset. Right, the next time they go to talk about a peace settlement deal, we're not going back to the old deal where we started before. We're going back to the 1991 borders, as Budanov said. We're going to go back to real normalcy, to resetting the world where we all want to live. Because I know you have been quite concerned, as have I, Robin, in our discussions in the background in relation to U.S. actions, not what was done, but what's being broken at the same time. Because if you break it, you own it. And the breaking it and then owning it on the part of major world powers has not had a very good history at all. And it's very concerning I'm not interested in any party coming in and dictating to Ukraine anymore the details of what is the fait accompli. The fait accompli, to me, looks like a return to the 1991 borders, and we have a clear path to that. So unless you want to show me a real benefit of not going to that point, or a real incapability of getting there, other than Russian disinformation of Russia's winning being inevitable, which it is not. It's going to have to be evidence-based discussions about where we're going now, not disinformation-based discussions, which has been too much of that so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to refer people to, I put it up in the nest. Our friend Beefeater Fella just published something about the UN that I think is very important to take a look at. In terms of the international order and who is the guardian of international order, and where, where the enforcement is going to come in the future, which is probably not the UN. Anyway, it's a very interesting article. I didn't really get to read it because it came out after we were already on, but I think it's definitely worth looking at. So let's go over to Lexi.
Well, that sounds good. Yeah, I'd like to see that. I think that we're seeing so many things starting to change. Everything's in flux right now. I mean, I think that Trump is real proud of himself that he's going in busting up everything. They think they're real revolutionaries. This is the MAGA revolution. But a whole lot of stuff is, as you blow stuff up, and then all of the flak and the confetti and everything in between starts falling down, coming to the floor, and you start to look around and say, "What the hell do you have?" I mean, there's no rules anymore. There's no predictability. We all know how the economy, any part of it, any company industry loves unpredictability, not. And so all of this is, nobody knows what can happen. But then you've got Ukraine, and Ukraine has done nothing but learn and get better. And everywhere else is chaos. And I just sort of see Ukraine cleaving through to what it said right at the start. This started with Crimea, it's going to end with Crimea, stuff like that. Ukraine has kept its long-term objectives really close. They have not, ever since. Remember how dismayed we all were since Trump came in and started pushing for these damn peace talks, peace, settlement, what have you. And we thought, oh, holy God, this is not what we need. But what do you do when the macro mouth of the world is yelling about it all the time? And slowly and surely, Ukraine has just sort of said, fine, you want to talk about that? We all know you're the biggest guy. You're the biggest fatso in the playground. So we're going to talk about what you want to talk about, fatso. But in the meantime, we got enough people that we got people who can work in the background and do all this other stuff and have successes, and piece by piece, step by step, get to where we want to be. So when all this chaos starts falling apart and really leaving the rest of the world completely fed up with all the noise, there's only so long that the Donald can avoid everything he's sown. And when all of that starts, when all these chickens, all the metaphors, let's do metaphors tonight. When all the chickens start coming home to roost, there's Ukraine still on its path. And as you say, we can talk about 1991. Ukraine's saying nothing about Crimea these days. No surprise to me. That doesn't mean that it's not happening. So, yeah, I think that Ukraine's playing its long game, and you could just see steady progress towards it. And it gives me a lot of hope and heart.
Yeah, and I kind of want to go to Ukraine right now because the panic in the media and all the chaos that's going on in the world, the calm and the just here's a metaphor, sticking to your knitting. So we have all the major Moscow airports shut down again, second night in a row, when it'll make a difference. We see now drone strikes taking out more oil reserves in Lipetsk, in near the front, right? We see Ukraine just getting on with it. And if the month of January goes through and we continue to see the drumbeat of support coming in for Ukraine in either military aid, economic aid, investment in its defense industry, or use of its loan capabilities to build up its capacity to drive Russia out. I mean, these guys aren't panicking at all. They're just getting on with moving toward winning this war, and I love this because the chop and change all the time. Even though he's just changed a whole bunch of people at the top of the government, it looks like a change to proceed toward winning the war, and dealing with negotiations on a more an even more adept basis of throwing out Russian disinformation, dispelling people who are trying to be bad actors in those discussions, and I will love to be a fly on the wall in the next meeting between Witkoff, Kushner, and the other people. That meeting's happening today, by the way. The coalition of the willing includes Kushner and Witkoff for some reason. I wouldn't even let those guys in the room at this point.
They're not
a
in the
security
room.
risk,
They're
frankly.
listening in. They're on Zoom. They don't want to go anywhere.
They're the Russian
Well, I'd mute them.
representatives.
I'd mute him. I wouldn't let him in. Hey, we've got another Canadoulian here who's probably come up to a crow about the fact that the economic advisor to Zelensky's a Canadian. Hey, Martin, how are you?
That's exactly right, Will. I am going to say that. I heard you reference it, and I don't know if Lexicon had referenced it because there was something happening with my Twitter feed, and I had to X out and then come back in.
Oh no, it's all you, buddy.
Oh,
Take the glory.
hey, yeah, sure, I'll shoulder it. What the heck? Blame it on me, of course. I'm good at taking guilt.
Well, I threw it out there for Lexi, but then she let it go through to the keeper, so it's all yours, my friend.
Listen, it's part of being Jewish too. Come on. Anyways, Robin, come on. You were supposed to get me some gigs at comedy clubs. What's going on? I hired you as my manager.
Oh, we're good.
I'm paying you good coin, and what do I get? Bupkis.
I'll see what I can do.
Hey, listen, if Lenny Bruce had to have relied on you, who would know his name today? As a matter of fact, who does know his name today? Am I
Who's
dating
that?
myself?
Yeah, there's something I have up in the back channel. It was who's done any of these things? And somebody was very proud. It was 10. It was things like using a modem to get on the internet and vinyl records and everything. I looked at this list. I did all 20 of them. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
I
getting
know.
old,
And
Martin.
me and you were going, yeah, where's the list of 40?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I could go on. Well, first of all, Will and Robin, you can, if you wanted to, I could, I posted on the timeline an article that, yes, Chrystia Freeland, former longtime member of the Liberal Party, a member of Parliament, and she's stepping down in the coming weeks as an MP, and the former Deputy Prime Minister under the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. She has accepted a position exactly as an unpaid economic advisor to President Zelensky. So, if you want to get a little bit more information about that, you can put that article.
I put it in the nest already, but give us. You know her from her past. Tell us a bit about her background.
Yeah, is she Ukrainian? Is she from the Ukrainian
She has
diaspora?
Ukrainian background.
Very
Yes,
nice.
she speaks 5 languages, and fluent, of course, in Ukrainian. Has been
Fantastic.
banned. Yeah, she was banned. What a kudo that is for her. She has been banned, blacklisted, whatever term you want to use, by the Putler regime. And you see, I'm a nobody. Nobody knows me. I wish somebody would ban
Yeah, I know,
me.
man. I'd love to get one of those.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It's terrible.
yeah,
I
yeah,
keep
yeah.
on trying to insult Medvedev on Twitter, but it hasn't done
Oh,
anything yet.
you know what? That guy insults himself every time he puts his foot in his mouth. Of course, that foot probably has a bottle of booze stuck in the shoe, so that's why he's doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody once said to him, yeah, when he took his socks off, he says, "Oh, what's that?" He says, "I had polio as a kid." Yeah, no wonder he does. He's got his foot stuck in his mouth. Anyways, that's a joke, Milton
So
Berle.
this
That's a reference to a line
Freeland.
from Milton Berle.
Yeah, I can tell.
So what are Freeland's economic chops? Why is she the person that's necessary for Ukraine at this time?
Well, she was Minister of Finance for a period of time under the former government here, so she's got some experience in that regard, and she's she's a smart cookie. So, as I say, it's an unpaid position. So I don't think she'll be the only person, but I think because of her vast international experience and her, work here in Canada as a strong advocate for continued and enhanced support for Ukraine, she will be an invaluable asset to the government in Ukraine. And she starts her position. When did I think she started already, or she will? But anyways, yeah. So people can read more in that article. But I'm personally I'm happy about that. I think that's really good, and it again just, in my opinion, strengthens the relationship between Canada and Ukraine, which is already very, very strong, of course. So there you go. And Robin, I'll be waiting for those gigs. Okay, geez, I got a whole set
Yeah,
of dates
don't
all free. So what's going on?
don't hold your breath, Martin.
Well, what do you think? I'm a scuba diver. Hold my breath, she says. No way. I'm not going to hold my breath. Maybe go take a drink. That's what I'll do to cool down, but hold my breath? No. Anyways,
So hey, how are you guys doing up there? Are you freezing up where you are? I know
oh
I
yeah.
know
Oh, the
there's been
weather.
a lot of snow, right?
Yeah. Well, where I am, I'm in Winnipeg. Will, Canada. Winnipeg. Yeah, it was a cold spell last week. We got lots of snow, but it was very mild the past few days, and so that's good. But of course, the streets, you still got to watch your step when you're walking, even though the streets are plowed, the sidewalks are plowed. It's can be icy and snowy, but yeah, it's lovely. One of the joys of having 4 distinct seasons. Like, well, actually, we only have 2 seasons: winter and road repair. Yeah, that's our other season.
Yeah, like they say in Buffalo, there's winter and then they've got 2 weeks of summer, right?
Ah, Buffalo. Oh my God, I've always wanted to visit Buffalo. God, I would feel so at home there in the summer. But anyways, enough of this sad, pitiful attempt at humor. I'll just leave it at that and say, oh yeah, I was watching the news just now, and of course, I think you referenced that, Will. The ambassador from the barbarian aggressor nation that's attacking Ukraine, of course, had his say at the Security Council today, and scratched I scratched my capella. I said, "Yes, of course, of course." The hypocrites are having their field day. Ay, vey, Izmir.
But he really should have had a pep me up before he went and gave that, because talk about low energy. It didn't even sound remotely like he believed it.
Yeah,
Well,
it's like he just had to say it. Probably he got his marching orders, and it was either that or a trip to the gulag, so he had to say it.
I was wondering why he's got no hair on that ugly head of his. Yeah, maybe it was from his previous years in the gulag, or maybe too much gulagging of vodka. Who knows? Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that, guys, and you get back to it. And Slava Ukraini, and
And I am
oh, a
Slava.
happy New Year to everybody. A
Yes,
good,
Happy
Yeah,
New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
yeah, a guten Nayor, and much health and treat to Ukraine. Okay, that's it.
Sendo do Peramocha. This will be the year, right? Well,
Yeah, this will be the year. Okay, talk to you later.
Thanks, Martin.
thanks, Martin.
Right. Well, we're about 45 minutes from done, so that we don't miss it. Let's shift to talking. Unless you've got some other important news items coming through, let's shift to talking about traveling to and from Ukraine, and the things that you might do when you're there.
Yeah, let's do that. In fact, I see several people and listeners who I know are either in Ukraine now or have been there. So if anyone, please feel free. We're going to try to go over some basics. I've had a few people ask me, they're planning on going to Ukraine, and how you get there and what you need to know. So I will give a little bit of what I've come up with, and Will give some of his of what he's learned. Lexicon has had a lot of experience. I'll go over to you, Lexicon, and then we'll do some of this.
I haven't had a lot of experience, but the biggest thing I want to know from all you insiders is when any new train routes that go straight to Lviv or straight to Kiev from any place in Europe. Like, that is to say, you don't have to get off the train and onto another
Yeah,
train at the
not
border.
yet.
And
Yep, not yet.
when that happens, I want to hear the news about it, because they're putting in tracks and all this. They're putting in transit. So, and I mean, one
Yep.
big reason is that all these leaders, every time they come in and out. I mean, I bet you that Zelensky doesn't go through, of course, this shit. There's the what's it called? The little town further along the border, further northeast. That's actually where they probably cross. There is a railway there.
Well, they must go through Medica because that's right. That's the closest to Zhezhov because they're always going to the airport. I assume they must go through there.
That's where anyway, so there was a lot of talk about putting in these various transits to European capitals
Well,
nearby, and that's what I want to hear about.
okay, our rail expert has just come up to speaker, so when he's ready to tell us about that, we will. I know that there is at this point you can get a through train. It's very hard to get tickets apparently, but there is a through train where you get to the border and they actually lift the train cars up and they switch out the bogies. They take the wheels that fit with the European gauge off and they put the imperial gauge bogies, the wheels on underneath. But from what I'm told, it's very hard to get tickets. And at this point, so that those are the sleeper train to Kyiv. I think is the only one that does that. But Peter knows more than I do, so I'm glad I was waiting for you to raise your hand, Peter. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening. It's 2:00 in the morning here. There's two border points where the broad gauge cars are jacked up and through carriages operate into Western Europe, Warsaw, from Kiev. And that is via the border at Yagodin and Dorohusk. And there are also trains that re-gauge at the border at Przemysl, and they go through to Vienna and I think Bratislava as well. And there's also Chop where they go through to Budapest. There's actually 3 different border points, but the Chop to Budapest is a long journey certainly from Kiev, via Lviv and another 12 hours or 10 hours within Ukraine. But because they're sort of through sleeping cars, certainly to Warsaw, they are booked out quite a long way in advance, and there's only something like, I can't remember, 5 or 6 carriages which actually go through, which, because they're sleepers with maximum of 36 people in each car, that's not a lot of inventory, and you've got sort of quite high demand for that. So an awful lot more people go through the effectively the borders, changing from a European gauge train to a broad gauge train across those borders without actually changing vehicle, without being on a vehicle that gets gauge changed, which is quite an elaborate process, which is really only suitable for people on through sleeping car journeys, departing at sort of early evening or whatever and arriving at a sensible time the next morning. So if you're going to Lviv, then you're generally better off flying to somewhere like Krakow or Katowice. I thought the airport at Rzeszów was no longer dealing with any civilian flights, but I may be
No,
wrong
you can.
with that.
No, you can definitely still. You can definitely
Yeah,
still.
you're right. You can get Rzeszów. Yeah, I'd sort of missed.
Yeah,
I haven't followed that very well, to be honest.
In fact, I'm going to throw a bomb, a hand grenade in here. Prove me wrong. If you just want to go into Ukraine, the best way to go in is to fly into Rzeszów and take the train to Przemysl, change trains, and go into Lviv. I found it to be quick, easy. And obviously, the only reason not to fly into Rzeszów is it's got a silly name that you can't say, but it is protected by 6 batteries of Patriots.
Patriots,
So,
that's right.
prove me wrong. What's better than going in that way?
Yeah, and that's doable. One of the things with talking about taking a train all the way, and what Peter was talking about is you will probably find some of us will not be able to get tickets. It's not always easy to get train tickets, so it's good. We're going to talk about some of the alternatives when you haven't managed to get a through train. But I want to go over to another Alex Ferguson first, who has plenty of experience with this too. Hi, Nether.
Hey, evening all. Happy New Year. I haven't spoken to any of you guys since then.
Yeah,
In
Happy New
terms
Year,
of
Alex.
in terms of let's say you're going to Kyiv. There's only been one time in my life where I've actually managed to get a ticket on that sleeper train. And that's the only reason I got it is because United 24 got it for me. So this was the first United 24 summit when me and 3 other NAFO fellows went. Literally, I've tried pretty much every time. Like I think I've been in and out of Ukraine 3 times last year. That never managed to get a ticket on that. But in terms of other options, I mean, I'd say the easiest way in and especially out of Ukraine, especially the outside, is actually to fly into Chisinau and just get a taxi to take you over the border to Odessa. Now, I don't think anyone wants
Yeah,
to go
but
to Odessa in the winter.
right. And
Uh,
it's quite a long trip from there to get up to Lviv. That's the problem.
but there are plenty of good trains from Odessa to Kyiv, and I would say like there's sleeper train options, but some of their modern day trains, I don't know about what it's like in America, but my God, they piss all over our trains. Like the sleeper trains are pretty old school and antiquated, but a day train from Odessa to Kyiv, it's actually just quite nice just to look out the window. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah, you
day
get
trains are
massive
really
amounts
nice.
of legroom.
And it also depends. I got a sleeper train back and forth from Lviv to Kyiv, and they were brand new cars. It was incredible. You could have eaten off of the floor. Yeah, I mean, just incredibly comfortable and clean. But
Yeah,
Peter
I think that's a
actually,
really important point, though, which I
yeah.
didn't know. Having the first time I went to Ukraine, I'm just like, well, all the trains are like this, right? No, I've been on some really horrible sleeper trains over
Oh
there. So
yeah.
you need to, trains aren't trains. Like you need to know, it's like, am I
I
getting a
was on an
Soviet
old
era
Soviet.
train?
Yeah, I was on a Soviet one going to Ivano-Frankivsk, and I was very happy. It was not a long trip. It was really
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Like if you're going to be in a modern Korean train, I'd be like, say, the easiest way out. I'd say the out's more important. Go to Odessa, especially if it's summertime. It's beautiful. Uh, Getting out, there's no bullshit at the border, unlike Poland. Like it's so much easier, and you get to see another part of Ukraine. I
Well,
wouldn't
and
recommend going in the winter.
Alice can tell us about how when he was in Odessa, he almost got taken out by a drone. So there is that.
Yeah, so that is the downside of Odessa, is that the hotel room I was in the first time I was there got blown up the second time I was there. Fortunately, I cheaped out and was on the other side of the hotel, so I was fine. So downside of Odessa, it's a very easy target because you can't put massive air defenses, 50 kilometers out because there's this thing called the ocean or the Black, you've got the Black Sea there. So unfortunately, the local air defense just has to wait till the heads are in range and have a crack. It gets pretty bad. Also, Odessa has a problem that basically there is only one main power line running into Odessa. So when they hit that, it just takes the entire place down. And it's not like they can network or like reload distribute, as I understand it. This is probably more Will's area. But yeah, when Odessa gets hit and the main line's taken out, that's why you see they have these 5-day blackouts. And it's bad at the moment. Apparently, February is the worst time of the year in terms of power supply in Ukraine. That starts to get better for March when solar starts coming on. But I'm guessing people are planning. And if you're planning like coming in the summer, Odessa on the beach in the summer is lovely. And the one thing I will say is that we didn't have interceptors like Sting, um, you know, a year ago. We have Sting now. Yes, Sting doesn't have the range to hit the Gerans or the Shaheads as they accumulate offshore of Odessa. That will change. I wasn't the only I'm certainly am not the only person working on mothership drones which could carry something like a Sting, basically just like a drone equivalent of an F-15 or a Eurofighter, just carry interceptors out to where the Shaheads are and just start lobbing interceptor Shaheads at them. So I'm hoping that Odessa is going to be quieter because hopefully someone, and I know lots of people are working on it, integrate proven interceptors onto motherships, and then the motherships go out there and just vaporize the Gerans before they actually have a chance for their final attack run. In which case, Odessa is a fantastic place to be. Kind of
So
hoping I'm going
you're
to be there this
saying
summer.
your vote is for flying into Chisinau, Moldova, to repeat that, and then taking the train into Odessa.
I would say if it's your first time trip, I would say you should leave by that route. I'm sure that
Gotcha.
everyone here who's left via Poland has at least one horror story about how long they've been stuck at the Polish border.
basically every trip.
Yeah, and
Let's
that's where
go to
Chisinau
Peter.
wins.
Okay, listen, guys. Let's go. We're gonna go to Peter and Lexi. Then I want to get on to other things. For example, Peter will be horrified, but there are other ways to get into Ukraine that don't require the train, and I want people to know about those options. So we'll go to that in a minute. Back to you, Will, and then you can go to
So
Peter and
Peter, what
Lexi.
do you think about these two routes? My preferred one is Zhizhov through Primosil on the train. There's tons of trains. I don't give a shit if it's a sleeper or just a ride, a sit up day train. My favorite is that route so far. I'm going to take another route just to see how it works from the next trip. But Chisinau into Odessa. What do you think?
Yeah, two things. It depends where you're going. If you're going to Lviv, then that's probably the best option to go through Przemysl. There are two downsides. One is that you have a possibly queue of an hour at the border at Przemysl to get onto the between the two countries, whichever way you
That's
go.
correct. It's at least an
Only an
hour.
At least an
hour?
hour, yeah, at least an hour. And the other downside is there are not a lot of trains between Przemysl and Lviv. And there is two local trains which you can theoretically get on, and just buy a ticket the same day. But you might find that the tickets are in sort of.
But the good news is the train doesn't leave to Lviv in Primosil until all the people are on it from waiting in queue.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah, that wasn't aware of that. So in other words, they'll delay the train's
Oh,
departure
also,
if the people are not on it. So I didn't know that.
right.
That's good.
I I also, Peter, I also found something just today because someone had clued me into this. If you go on the Pole Rail site, the Polish railways, you can reserve right through to Lviv, along with the change at
Yeah,
Przemysl.
that's my top tip. Book your travel online using the Polish rail system, which is quite good, and it'll get you all the way through.
Yeah, because the reservation systems are controlled by the country you're departing from. So in theory, all the trains going from Poland to Ukraine the tickets are controlled by the Poles and vice versa. The tickets are controlled by the Ukrainians. That's standard across all international railways. So that shouldn't be a surprise. With Alex Ferguson, if you're still there, if you're trying to get if anybody's trying to get to Kiev, there's a really easy workaround to if the Warsaw-Kiev train is full, which it usually is, like weeks in advance, because as I say, there's only 4 or 5 carriages or 5 or 6 carriages. That's the max amount they re-gauge because they attach those carriages to an internal Polish train. It gets overweight, etc., and that's a lot less inventory than there is demand. So, but the point is the broad gauge now runs across the border to a place called Helm, which is 25 kilometers or so inside Poland. And the broad gauge Ukrainian trains, Ukrainian internal trains, effectively now run right across the border into Poland. That is made a massive difference because all you need to do is just get on a regular internal train from Warsaw or Lublin through Lublin to Helm, and then you can get directly on a Ukrainian train at Helm. And because it's their Ukrainian gauge, they don't need to be re-gauged. They're 10 or more coaches long, and there's a lot more inventory. People don't know about it, so that's the way I went in. And if you're going to Kiev, that's better. If you're going to Lviv, it's not quite so useful because it doesn't go to Lviv, and and you don't even need to reserve in advance. Just rock up, buy a ticket on the next train, and go in that way. I don't believe in sort of reserving weeks in advance. It's just not part of my DNA. A decent train service, you just turn up and go, and you can't do that on the Warsaw-Kiev train because there's not enough inventory, so it books out weeks in advance. So I don't go on that. I just ignore that, but just fly into Lublin or Warsaw, jump on a train to Helm or get a taxi to Helm. And the good thing with that border is you stay on the train at the border. You don't get kicked out and have to stand in endless queues for hours in the cold and the rain and all that nonsense. You stay on the train and they come round and do the passport check, the exit from Poland and the entry into Ukraine on the train. So you just stay in comfort, relax and enjoy in a train and not queuing in some god awful situation where it's out in the open and raining or blowing a gale or whatever.
Honestly, it's like you were with me on my last trip.
It's like I was with you.
Well, we actually, for us, going across the border last time was the easiest part of the whole thing. It was getting to the
Oh, but
border.
going in was exactly what Peter
So,
said.
yeah.
You get dumped off the train in Premysl.
Yeah,
You have to
crazy.
you have to
It's
find.
mad.
There's no signs. You just have to follow the crowd. The crowd takes you to a queue that you don't know where it ends, and you're wondering how long it's going to take. The Polish customs and on that side of the border was all stand in queue in the rain. But once you through that, you get into the train station. You get on the train, and they do all the passport control and everything on the Ukrainian side on the train as you go. And the good news was the train didn't leave until everybody who was standing in queue on the Polish side got out. So as long as I knew they weren't going to leave without me, I was happy to just go stand back in queue. But standing there not knowing what's happening forever while it's raining and it's cold, you think, I'm a bit over this.
Yeah, it's not good.
That is one of the advantages, and there are very few advantages to the bus. And Will and I have horror stories about the bus. But when I went in the last time, I went to Warsaw. I flew to Warsaw, and then I took a bus from Warsaw to Ivano-Frankivsk, which was like 11-hour bus ride. It was
And then
terribly
she
long.
needed a
But so
12-hour
you get
nap
to the
after
border.
that till she turned back into Robin.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes, I was greeted at the bus station by Will and our friend Stas. That was very nice, actually. But yeah, I was pretty wiped at that point. But the one thing about crossing on the bus is they come and they come onto the bus. They collect your passports. They take them, stamp everything and come back. You don't have to get, at least that bus. I didn't have to get off of it. We stayed on it. So for whatever. But for me, I think for Will too, the bus is the absolute last resort if nothing else works, including getting a car to the border and walking across. Anyway,
Exactly,
back to you
especially
guys.
coming out, because we're talking about all the difficulties seem to be in passport control on the Polish side of the border. So they have been the holdup every time I've gone in and out, and the flying to the closest major airport to the border, whether it's Zhao or Lublin, and taking a taxi to the border. Walking across the border takes about 10 minutes, and then finding a taxi on the other side to take you into Lviv or the next train station. It sounds absurd, but that's actually a fairly good way to go.
Yep, absolutely. I absolutely agree. The only thing I would warn you is if you're traveling to Ukraine, you need suitcases that have four wheels on the bottom that you don't have to balance the whole time. Is the first time I went, our dear friend Ben Goldhagen said, "Oh, you have to walk across the border. It's so iconic." And this was in July, I believe. It was like 175 degrees, and I had this duffel on wheels that I had to hold up the whole time. I almost died. So just keep that in mind. You want to have good luggage that can stand up by itself on its own four wheels, in my
Back to
opinion.
Peter.
Yeah, okay. So the other good thing about Helm is that there's about 3 trains a day from Helm into Ukraine, including a through train to Kharkiv, which runs every other day, I think. And they used to be on a Dnipro as well, direct from Helm through Kiev. They all go to Kiev and beyond. Whereas from Warsaw overnight, there's only one train. And it's basically half a train to direct to Kiev, and it basically doesn't matter if you get on a Polish train and then just get off at Helm and then get on the Ukrainian train there. What's the difference? The only difference is you physically get off a train and the same carriage doesn't get regauged, and because of that, it's cheaper and everything. So that's the best way if you're going to Kiev. 100%, that's the best way to do it. And that's how I did it, and it was easy. I just turned up, and the train was nothing like full from Helm, and I bought a ticket just there and then, and it wasn't a problem at all. I don't think the train would ever be full because they get fuller. People got on at Lutsk and various other places, Kovel, and that it went already in Ukraine. So that's the easiest way of doing it, I would say. The other thing is there is now a new line which has been reopened direct to Lviv, a standard gauge line, which used to be broad gauge, which closed. So there was no passenger service on it at all. I think there was no freight on it either. It was a sort of relic, and it just had fallen into disuse in effect, which goes from Lublin across the border at Rava Ruskaya, and direct to Lviv. And it's only about, I think it's 25 kilometers from the border at Rava Ruskaya to Lviv. And they have regauged that line to standard gauge right through to Lviv and reopened the line. Now, I don't know if there's any passenger service on it yet. That happened, I think, a year ago. I don't know if there's any passenger service on it. I just haven't heard, and I haven't really followed it.
I looked and didn't
Really,
see anything
so
scheduled, so I think it might not yet.
I suspect they may need all the capacity on that line for freight service, and there's no actual passenger service on there. But that would be the easiest way to get to from Ukraine, or at least from Warsaw or Lublin, to Lviv if you're going there, if there is a passenger service on that line. But I haven't heard that there is. But it'd probably be only be one or two trains a day initially. It won't be very frequent. So that's something that will happen at some point. But fundamentally, if you're going to Lviv, go in through Przemysl and just hack the bloody nonsense at the border there, and hope you can get a ticket from Przemysl to Lviv. And if you're going to Kiev, go in through Warsaw, or fly to Warsaw or Lublin, and get a train to Helm and jump on a broad gauge Ukrainian train there. And then you don't even have to get off at the border at all. It's just much more civilized.
The other thing I noticed about Przemysl that I'll ask you whether or not this is common, Peter, is if you're looking online and the trains are look to be totally full and you can't get a ticket, you can check back in a couple of days, because if they're totally full, they oftentimes just add a car and then add another 40, 50 seats.
Yeah, they
And also on the Ukrzaliznytsia app, you can set it to alert you when that happens. So that's, for the Ukrainian trains, that helps
they
a
not
lot.
only they can vary the context. They can, if it's particularly busy, that's particularly high demand, they can add carriages to certain trains, so they can create more inventory that way. The other thing they do is that quite routinely they hold some space back and to be opened up 24 hours before departure. So they have a bunch of tickets, and they also hold tickets back for the military and all sorts of other things, and for people with social reasons and things like that. So it's not unusual to find a train is full, and then to come back 24 hours later and to find that there's now some tickets available. People might think that's weird because they're just used to airline mentality. That's just how the railway system works. They don't like to have trains completely full, weeks and weeks in advance. But it's different with the Warsaw sleeper, Warsaw Kiev sleeper, because that's a sort of quite prestige international service, and it's from between two capitals, and there's massively more demand now than there are carriages. So that's a sort of, that doesn't apply to that one, but it does apply to the sort of most regular internal Ukrainian trains. But anyway, I hope that's particularly useful to Alex Ferguson, because if you're trying to get to Kiev, just going to Helm and getting on a Ukrainian train there is the simple workaround to the Warsaw sleeper every night being full, because you achieve the same result. In fact, and you've got a choice of three trains usually from Helm, so you can sort of have a bit.
And for Cro-Mags like me, that's spelled Chelm, for those of you who are looking at a map. Alex.
Also, one other thing I wanted to throw in real quick, Will. Just people sometimes get confused. Przemysl is the town where you go through. If you're on the train, the border crossing is called Medica, though. So sometimes people think it's two different things. The Medica is the actual border crossing if you're walking across, just FYI. Okay, Alex.
Well, First off, I've been pronouncing Chelm or Helm incorrectly for a couple of years. That's a good start. The actually question, so I think the main problem everyone identifies with getting into Ukraine is, especially on train, is it's the border, which is the real problem. And Helm, I think I've actually done that once. So I've been to Ukraine twice. I remember on both times I took my passport at night. I know I wasn't on the Warsaw to Kyiv one. So I think I have done the Kelm one. But actually, one of the questions I had, because when I went in this flight, first year or like around about full scale invasion, quite easy to get tickets online. I've since noted, or you've heard people internally in Ukraine complain about, oh, you can't book tickets, or how do you get tickets, or you can only book tickets if you're on a system. So I didn't really see the transition because I have a Ukrainian bank account, I have a Ukrainian phone number. Are there any things that people should be aware of in terms of the difficulty of booking tickets in Ukraine if they don't necessarily have like a digital presence there?
Oh, good. Yeah,
Real
that's a
good
very
point. You
good
should
point.
have a
You
local
you
sim.
can. Well, no, but well, that's a different issue, though. Will you can, if you have the Ukrzaliznytsia app. I paid with an American credit card, American phone number, and everything, and I was able to do that. We're going in a minute, though. I want to get off, and we need to talk about what to do about cell phones in Ukraine, money, credit cards, and things like that. So we have to get across the border now to deal with stuff inside, because the having a local SIM. This is an important thing we need to talk about in a minute. But let's go to Lexicon and then Carl, and then hopefully we'll transition over to that. Lexicon.
God, as an economist, it's so painful to listen to all these tales of market failure. You have heard me wax on about the damn town of Przemysl. I'd love to know about the mayor's accountants there. Like, how much money is that town raking in for shit service? Pardon me, but shit service, and the whole world is trying to traipse across that damn border. Anyway, I don't know why it hasn't got better, but recently, when you get onto the telephone, Ukraine has just as of January entered into the Euro touring, whatever we call it. No, your Ukrainian SIM card can tour all over Europe. They're part of this Ukrainian system. But I just wanted to ask about the mythical Chisinau to Odessa train, because I heard they always, it's listed on there, but you can never get tickets because the train isn't actually running. Apparently, that railway runs through a tiny little bit of Transnistria. Is this true or not? That's what I've heard. So while they did it for about 3 weeks back in some historical time, and keep saying yes, yes, whenever you want the ticket, yes, it should be open by 2 months from the date you want to go. But does anybody know about, and does this train line run through a tiny little salient of Transnistria?
No,
Yeah,
so sorry. When I was talking about going from Chisinau to Odessa, I was suggesting just fly into Chisinau and just get a taxi to take you to Odessa, and then get a train from Odessa to Kyiv, and make sure you get a nice
Right,
modern. I
yeah.
think that might be Chinese or Korean. I don't know, but there are definitely regular modern trains from Odessa to Kyiv.
Right,
But
right, right. I just
I say
wondering if
that,
they'll ever
yeah,
invent a train from Chisinau to Ukraine that they
that sounds
pretend to
more like a
have.
Peter question.
yeah. There's already trains from Chisinau to Ukraine, two routes: Chisinau to Kiev,
Yeah, just that
north
it
out of
doesn't
Chisinau,
run.
north out of Chisinau, and there's south out of Chisinau, Chisinau to Odessa. And that, you are correct, that goes through Transnistria, goes through Tiraspol, and there's no deviation to that because there's only one rail line, and that's the way it goes. And they basically have this Mickey Mouse customs control on the train, and pretend they're going into this
The
wonderful
Soviet
country called
Union.
Transnistria. Yeah. And I haven't been on that line recently. The last time I went on it was 1994, so I'm well out of date. But I know people who have been on it, and they basically have just told the Transnistrian people, get stuffed, I don't recognise your country, F off, and they basically just go away. And they don't hassle you if you tell them that, and they try and extort $20 out of you for a visa, and basically I know it just said, I'm not paying a visa, you twats, bugger off. And and they do, they literally, okay, right, you know they just look for people who are happy to sort of comply, because people who are not used to it expect that, you know, when somebody with a big hat and a looking official comes along and says something, you think they're sort of a real country. Well, of course, they're not a real country. It's a load of nonsense. And if you just tell them that and stand your ground, they just go away. It's amazing, really.
I love it. You know, last night we were talking about the invasion into the exclusion zone of Chernobyl, and the guy who was the head of the plant there basically did that with the Russian invaders, and they ended up doing everything the way he told them to. It's the same thing. If you stand up to these tin pot dictator types, they don't know how to do with it. What to do with it, and they often back off. It's interesting. Thanks. Okay, we're gonna go to Carl and then Alan, and then I still want to get to what to do once you're inside of Ukraine. Carl, go ahead. Welcome.
Well, I haven't actually been on a train in Ukraine because I just drove myself everywhere. I did have issues with buying train tickets for a friend who was needing to leave to get his visa and come back. And I did have a Ukrainian SIM, but online the app would not let me use a non-Ukrainian bank account. And you know, after trying 5 or 6 different accounts, ended up just finding someone who had a Ukrainian bank account to do it. So yeah, obviously you have had success, Robin, but it's probably something that people.
Your mileage may differ, yeah.
But especially if it's last minute, and I think I know people who have kind of got around it by just going to a train station and buying the ticket there. Which, you know, it is not the way I like to do things these days. Also, I wasn't able to buy an eSIM because, you know, often our phones don't have physical SIMs. I wasn't able to buy a Vodafone Ukraine eSIM with a non-Ukrainian bank account, card, which kind of makes sense. Otherwise, you just have the Russians using it to get access to control stuff. But
Carl, how long ago was this?
that was 2023. But I think there's a fair bit of control over SIMs because you know they don't want Russians to have them to be able to control drones and stuff. But for my physical phone, there's no issue because I just went into a gas station and just got Kyivstar. I didn't try to buy Kyivstar online, but Vodafone Ukraine to get my eSIM. But I basically had to have a Ukrainian friend do it.
Can I say a few things there?
I think that might have. Okay, go ahead.
It comes as a surprise to me that you've got problems with Western bank accounts paying for rail tickets. I've never had any problem with that. Certainly, if you're going from Poland, just use Polish money or use a British or American bank card to buy a ticket into Ukraine. That should be no problem at all. Or book on a Polish rail website if you want to. And if you're in Ukraine buying a rail ticket, just use a British or American bank card. That shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, my experience, I had no trouble anywhere in Ukraine using an American Visa card, or I mean, in fact, Apple Pay I found everywhere. So this may have improved in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem for anything other than a online train ticket out, from within, and for the SIM. Everything else was just seamless, right? And kind of the tap to pay, but those were both online services. So.
Yeah, no, I did. I got a SIM. I went into a store and got a SIM with an American card.
Oh yeah. In person, a physical SIM was not a problem because that wasn't an online purchase. But like an modern iPhone, you can't even put in a physical SIM. You have to get an electronic version. So, but I also had phones with me that could take physical SIMs as well because, I needed to be able to swap it out when I was closer to the west. For even getting into Ukraine, I just used like a Europe travel SIM. But once I wanted to go further east, I only wanted to have Ukrainian SIMs active, not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up. And I just, guys, another, and Alan, just hang on a sec. I want to just mention this because we're getting close to the end and we're having such a great conversation. But if you're going into Ukraine, I, for example, have T-Mobile in the United States, which works with Deutsche Telekom, completely seamless to use in Ukraine. But the thing to be aware of, if you're going anywhere close to the front lines, you do not want to have a phone that marks you as a foreigner. You want to shut down that phone. You can get a very I have a cheap Android that I got from Kyivstar with a Ukrainian SIM. It's a very important security issue to not be using a foreign phone anywhere near the front lines. So you should know that. When I was in Western Ukraine, I used my in Lviv and Ivano-Frankivsk, I used T-Mobile and didn't have any problem. But if you're within detection range of the Russians and their drones, you don't want to have anything that marks you as a foreigner, because that's like a target on your back. Anyway, but I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So let's. Oh gosh, Will, who is next? I keep
Gotta
on
be
losing
Alan.
my the order. Alan, darling, go ahead.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Will. I just wanted to say about phones in Ukraine. Chuck and I were assisted by Will in Lviv to get our Ukrainian phones. Very,
Yeah,
very
I felt like
simple.
Q. I felt like Q taking these guys all set up for their
Yeah.
mission.
Well, Will, I had my landline with me. It's a nice pink Princess phone. I showed it to you, and you said, "What the hell are you going to do with that?" I said, "I don't know. I cannot get a dial tone with it." He said, "Let's get you a Ukrainian cell phone." So Chuck and Will and I uh, went to a phone store in Lviv, got our Ukrainian phones, and Robin is exactly right. You cannot have a Western phone if you get anywhere close to the front lines. I
And in
actually,
fact, take your Western phone, take the SIM out of it, wrap it up, and put it in like a Post-it note. Don't even have a SIM in that phone, and keep that phone shut off.
that is exactly,
That's hard to do if you have an eSIM,
yeah,
but yeah.
exactly right. Um, Chuck and I turned our phones off once we were outside Kiev and on our way to Odessa. I don't think we uh, went back to our American phones until we returned to Lviv, actually. I don't even want to have my American phone on in Kiev, to tell you the truth. Anyway, I really would like to bring my Princess phone to Ukraine in April. Get a dial tone. It's a beautiful phone, very comfortable in your
We'll
hand.
set you up at Nether Alex Ferguson's
It's
apartment.
This is the one that Alan uses to co-host. It's steam driven, I think, right, Alan?
Yes, it's Steam driven, and very proud of the arrangement I've made to co-host with it.
All right. Okay. We still have to talk about money and credit cards in Ukraine and taxis. But let's go. Who is next? Will. Oh God, I'm terrible. I'm really not keeping
We'll
track
go
now.
Nether, then Alex, then Peter.
Okay, well, this actually dovetails pretty nicely because Will, Alan, Robin have basically just covered everything I wanted to say about eSIMs and where you should definitely not have a identifiable Western MAC address, phone number, etc. And then dovetailing into the credit cards. Personally, I've had very little problems in Ukraine with credit cards, apart from one particular trip where I was delivering aid with Ziggersport to various units. If you have a Western credit card and you use it in an area which the SWIFT system identifies as Russian or Russian occupied, your bank account and your cards get shut the fuck down. So yes, this was a very embarrassing.
Good to
So
know.
I remember it was the most bizarre thing. Like, this is when Chosen Company was still a thing. We were delivering some jammers to them, and I was like, "I'll buy you guys coffee and like a croissant at the local." This was really out east, and Put my credit card in, declined. It's like, fuck, that's embarrassing. Try again, declined. Right, I'll take my other bank, my other credit card from my other bank, try that. Declined, declined. It's like, oh shit, okay, I'll try my Revolut. All declined. Fortunately, I was with the Ziggers Porter. Very embarrassing. Arena of Ziggers Port paid for these guys coffee and croissants when I said I would do it after we delivered them the jammers. Obviously, I paid Ziggers Port back. But the real problem was, being in sanctioned territory.
Now they don't work.
Being in sanctioned territory also caused me a shitload of problems back home with my bank accounts and all sorts of subscriptions being cancelled. I'd say the least worst option I had at the time was my Revolut, because back when I was in what was considered Ukrainian territory, I mean, I think the fact I was having coffee with Chosen Company, or trying to, tells you it's Ukrainian territory. It's not Russian, but whatever. But yeah, a digital credit card. Revolut, I hear good things about Monzo, but once I was realized the problem, I could reactivate my Monzo card online. And that was the only card I had for the remaining. I was there for another month, and I had 2 banks and a Revolut, and I basically was unable to reconcile problems with my banks. So thank God I had a Revolut account, and also had Ziggers Sport to help me out when apparently I was in Russian territory, and basically the global Swiss system decided to fuck me. Doesn't happen with my Eucharist bank card though. Yep. So I've got a Ukrainian bank account now, so that's not a problem anymore. But to be aware of, if you don't have a Ukrainian account, have a digital credit card which you can instantly renew, because you do not want to be without cards.
Yeah. And this is specifically, as you're saying, when you get close to the front, because Swift can't seem to figure out where the front line is. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, and this is important, is if you're using a foreign credit card, I had no trouble doing it, but you have to check with your bank before you go to make sure that you're not going to be charged a fee for every time there's a currency exchange. My credit card didn't, but you can be hit with major fees if you've got a card that charges you every time there's a currency conversion, because every time you make a charge, there'll be a currency conversion. So you just need to check with your bank to make sure that isn't a problem, and to get a different card if the card that you have is going to charge you for it. And in a minute, we're going to talk about car services and taxis, but let's go to Peter and then Alan.
Yeah, a couple of things. I did actually have an interesting taxi experience. I went to Sumi, and at this time, it was about a month after the Kursk operation was in full swing. So I was amazed in Kiev, Uber and stuff and Bolt, and that just works just absolutely normally, just exactly like anywhere else, as it indeed should do. So I was at Sumi. I thought, I'll try this out here. So I ordered an Uber from Sumi to Suja, i.e. on Ukrainian occupied Russian territory, and sort of just to see what would happen. And it came back no rides available, so that there was no, it wouldn't. The system would not work.
Couldn't find somebody that crazy.
Couldn't find somebody that crazy. So me being fairly crazy, I just went to the railway station, which was right outside where I'd arrived anyway, and found a local taxi driver called Vasya, and said, "Will you go to Suja?" And he said, "I'm not sure we'll get there, but we'll give it a go, and we'll go as far as we can." And off we set. And I tried to go to Suja. And then that evening, I got another train onto Kharkiv and was in the hotel and was looking at a load of tweets and listening to the space online. It may have been a different space then. Set.
We did hear from you when you were there. I remember.
Sergei Sumleni and was it
Jason Smart.
Jason Smart actually went to Suja that day. So I think I had texted Jason Smart to say, if you're in Kharkiv, I'm around and meet up for a coffee. Little did I know he was actually doing the same thing as I was trying to do, but he was doing it more successfully. But he had much better contacts, and he went through a whole procedure of disabling your Western phone, and went with the military, and of course he had somebody effectively on the inside, Sergei Sumleni, who took him. But I was a bit blown away that he actually achieved what I was trying to achieve in a very amateurish way. Anyway, I got about a third of the way to Suja. In fact, I had been on that road before because I came across that border by road, bizarrely, because I got thrown off a train on a border near there that was only allowed for in 2011, so way before. I had been across the road border at Suja because I got thrown off a train where the border is closed now from Volfino to Glushkovo, where the border then had just changed and was only able to be travelled by Russian and Ukrainian passport holders only. So passport holders with other passports were not allowed over that border by rail. And they basically threw me off the train, said you'll have to go over the road border. And I went through the road border at Suja. So I had actually been there. I think it was 2011 or 2009. I can't remember, a long time ago. And anyway, so we went up there and we went through a series of roadblocks that got increasingly severe, and until a point where they basically said you can't go beyond here. So rather than argue with them, I decided to okay, there's probably a good reason for this, and indeed there was. They said later that there were drones. And I noticed, I didn't say this at the time because I didn't want to sort of give anything away, but all the vehicles going, that journey by taxi was quite interesting to see a modern 21st century military logistics chain in full operation. And all the vehicles were marked in a particular way, and this was largely because if they weren't, further along the road, you would be attacked by a Ukrainian drone if your vehicle was not marked correctly. And of course, me in just some random taxi was not marked in the correct manner, and it would have been dangerous to go further. And the checkpoint were not allowing people. But I've got a screen grab of where we got to, so I know exactly how far I got. And it was about a third of the way to Suja from Sumy, and we saw a school that had been bombed a couple of weeks previously. We saw houses that had been bombed. I think some of them within been rocket attacks within the past 24 hours. And same in Sumy. Actually, I saw the shopping centre that had been attacked the previous day and previous night. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I just wanted to bring this back. I mean, I'm a little concerned. I had hoped that some of this could be to encourage people that going to Ukraine is a viable option during the war. And I think it's very important to point out that we're talking with a couple of several very brave individuals who have gone very close to the front, doing relief work and bringing things that were needed at the front. Most of Ukraine is not the front line. If you're in Lviv, you're 14 hours away from the front line, and I think it's important that people understand that. And I think maybe we'll do another one, Will, with
we can carry on next week. This has got a lot of content in it, but
right.
But there's a lot more to find out. But trust me, or don't trust me. You're look at it yourself. Your incremental quantitative risk of going to Ukraine at present time, depending on where you're traveling from, is probably no more risky than where you're sitting right now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn. I honestly, and I say this, and people think I'm crazy, but I really felt safer in Lviv and Ivano-Frankivsk, even in Kyiv, than I do in Brooklyn, because the crime rate is very low. You have to worry about the Russians, but you don't have to worry about getting mugged on the street. It's a functioning civil society. I wanted to just mention, what we're talking about taxis. There is Uber and Bolt, but if you want to do a little extra to help the Ukrainian economy, and a really great company is a company called Uklon, Uklon, that that makes a point of hiring ex-servicemen who, you know, or have been wounded or whatever, come back to work, and also has given tremendous amounts to charity and to the military in Ukraine. It's a great way to support Ukraine, and it's very convenient. A lot of cars. They gave several million hryvnia to the Ahmadit Children's Hospital after it
Yeah,
was
so set
bombed.
yourself up a
So
Uklon
it's a
account
great
before you go to, and
okay.
then you can take a taxi when you need to, or you can do what I do, which is get to know and use the public train system intercity, in city
Yes,
ones,
absolutely.
which I also recommend to people highly because you'll save a lot of money, and it's a great way to tour around cities.
Yeah, and you get a you know, you get a feel for the people. You know, you meet people. It's yeah. I definitely, and I used Uklon when I had to get somewhere fast or when I was just too tired. But definitely taking the public transportation is the way to go. Okay, I again have no idea. I think Alan was next. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Will,
we'll go
back
around
to
the horn.
you.
Alan, and then Peter, and then another.
Yeah, I was just going to say, absolutely set yourself up with an Uklon account. The only thing I'll say is sometimes it's not that easy to find the pickup spot outside the train station or something like that. But you know, it's very useful, and the taxi driver is really good. Also, you have the opportunity on Uklon to make an additional contribution that will go to help a charity in Ukraine. The other thing I want to say is, Peter, my God, taking a cab to Suja? What are you, crazy? Chuck and I were stopped at a checkpoint on a hill overlooking Sumi and turned back. It's the only place we couldn't go. And, you know, I didn't say to Chuck, you want to get a cab? Because it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I know. Well, do bear in mind that when I was there, it was a year earlier, and the railway along Sumy to Kharkiv actually does run pretty close to the Russian border. But by then, it wasn't a very hot area. It was much hotter on the Russian side of the border because the Ukrainians were occupying 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory at that time. So it was on the Ukrainian side, it was relatively safe. There was damage and there were rockets coming into Sumy. But I've been to both Sumy and Kharkiv before the war several times, so I'm familiar with them, and I'm not intimidated by going that close. Some people might feel uncomfortable. That's up to them. You know, you've got your own personal level of risk. I just take the view that, well, rockets are raining down and drones are coming down, and one might land on you. And if it does, well, bad luck. But the statistical probability of that is relatively low. You just have to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But this year, of course, things are different because the Ukrainians sadly had lost the part of Kursk Oblast largely due to the withdrawal of intelligence and nonsense that came from across the Atlantic. And of course, the Russians have now come into Sumy, so the front line has moved a lot nearer Sumy. And so this year, I'm not surprised that it was difficult to get to Sumy. And of course, there was that horrific case where a train was actually targeted while stationary with passengers on it while stationary in Sumy. And I've seen pictures of Sumy Station now. And when I was there were a couple of panes of glass that were broken, but it was broadly intact. And recently it got quite badly damaged with a rocket attack, and the whole thing had been a bit beaten up, which is very sad. So I certainly wasn't my intention to discourage people from going to Ukraine. And in general, Kiev and Kharkiv are very safe, and Kiev and Lviv are very safe. I love Kharkiv as a city. It's an absolutely amazing city. It's the people and the whole atmosphere there, and I specifically wanted to go there. I actually wanted to go to Odessa as well, but I just couldn't do all of them, and Odessa had to drop out because I only had about 5 days in total. But so you don't have to go to those places. You can do stuff and help in Kiev and Lviv, and it's generally safer there. And if you haven't been, then that's more sensible. But because I'm pretty familiar with Ukraine and I've travelled across there before the war, it's sort of no problem for me. So and there's those places were specifically places I wanted to go to. So that's what I did. And I thought while I was in Sumy, I thought, well, I'll just try and get to Suja, especially as I'd been through the Suja border before, although under slightly different circumstances. I thought, well, what the hell, just do a test for Uber. And I'm delighted to say I stumped the Uber system. I defeated it, or it defeated me. And anyway, I got as far as I could, and it was interesting. It was a very interesting day to see what was going on there at the time, because the Kursk offensive was in sort of full swing, and to see that military supply line was very interesting. Anyway, there we are. I'll pass on to somebody else now.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for your, you give us a different perspective on a lot of this. I appreciate it. Let's go to Alan, and then we'll go to another, and then I think we're gonna start considering shutting down. Go ahead, Alan.
Thanks, Robin. I'll be very quick, and I'll see you tomorrow night back here on Volya Radio. I just wanted to say Ukraine is a safe and welcoming country to visit. As Peter has said, as Robin and Will and Alex have pointed out, and Lexi, Lviv completely safe. Although, I stood out in the street in Lviv and listened to an air raid alert and to some Shahed drones go overhead. Did the same thing in Kharkiv. Did the same thing in Kiev, for that matter. But
we're all a little bit crazy here.
I
Yeah,
know we're crazy, but these are big cities. Kharkiv, more than 1 million people. Kiev, I think, is more than 6 million people, Robin? Something like that.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with numbers.
And Lviv, a big city. You are gonna get some air raid alerts. So what? I've also been in bomb shelters. So what? What you're going to go through in Ukraine is nothing like what Ukrainians are going through in their everyday lives. So join with Ukrainians, learn from them, learn a little Ukrainian, and join in the singing in the bomb shelters and the subways in Kiev, or just enjoy it and dance a little bit, because that is how Ukrainians get through the air raids. They sing and they dance and they go home and they make coffee. They get a little sleep. They go to work. They get the kids to school, sometimes underground classrooms, and life goes on. You should be a part of that life that goes on in Ukraine, because you will learn something you have no other opportunity to learn.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Yeah, and what will happen to you is what's happened to everybody who's been speaking here tonight. Once you've gone to Ukraine, once you will have to go back. It gets under your skin. It gets to be, you'll fall in love with the people and the country. It's just an amazing place. And I have such love and admiration for Ukrainians. I can hardly wait to get back there again. Alex, and then Peter.
Yeah, I guess you guys once again kind of covered a lot of it. A lot of Ukraine is actually very safe to visit. Like, I'm currently in a ski resort in Colorado, so yeah, Kiev and Lviv are probably more dangerous than Beaver Creek, Colorado. But day to day, probably about the same of much of London where I'm from. Now, like, bear in mind where Peter was talking about going is the sort of place where I had the problems with a credit card, which is considered by much of the world Russian occupied territory. The reason I was there was to deliver supplies to a number of units. So I had a reason to be there. I was just, do not remotely try and go anywhere like that unless you have a reason to be there. Like, I mean, because it is pretty sketchy there. And the other thing that's important is the effect of time. So Peter was like, yeah, he was there last year. Like, I was, let's say close to the front, like not at the front line, but delivering aid to units who are in, deployed in combat. And we had all the letters, like, we're delivering this to this unit, this to this unit, this to this unit. And I think this was the first time Zigazpur had a foreigner coming with them. So even though they had the letters and the paperwork, there was one case where they actually had to get an officer to, essentially come to the checkpoint and wave us through. So I was with a Ukrainian NGO delivering much needed drones, EW equipment, etc., with letters from all of the officers relevant in the supply chain. And just the fact that one of us was non-Ukrainian, a Brit, I also had a shitload of drones with me, which actually probably helped. The fact that they had British drones actually probably helped me get through. But there was immediate, who the hell is this foreigner and why is he here? And when you were there, so a year ago, well, I was there in March. So that's just a matter of time. And also another incident I had is like, okay, we were gonna drive to Pokrovsk, and this was back in, once again, March last year. And a mate of mine, Canadian of Ukrainian descent, he's a drone pilot. There's an article in Forbes about him. He just got on rotation. We met up for a coffee, once again, near the front somewhere. And we were like, oh yeah, we're going to go this way. We're going to Pokrovsk. And he just looked at me. It's like, you're not fucking going to Pokrovsk. And it just turned out that the intelligence that we had was that Russia does not have fire control over this road. And my mate was like, I fly interceptor drones all over this place at the time. Like, I'm not an ISR, I'm an interceptor pilot, but I see what's going on. They have fire control over that road. You're not bloody going. And we didn't. But you have to be aware that, like, the value of information decays very, very rapidly the closer you are to the line of contact. So one, I'd suggest don't go anywhere fucking close unless you have a very good reason to be there. But if you are there, please bear that in mind, and please try and find someone who's got a lot of experience to go with for your first trip. Like Zigazpur do this the whole time. That was my first trip out there. Have been out there subsequently to fly drones on my own back, but go with someone who knows the ropes first. And just don't take risks unless you really need to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. For two reasons. One of which, why take a foolish risk? But also, you could easily put yourself in a position where Ukraine has to expend resources to get you out of trouble. So if you don't have a good reason to be there, don't go there. Yeah, thanks, Peter. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'd like to pick up on the sort of welcoming nature of Ukraine, and partly, I want to go there to feel the Ukrainians that they were being supported, because I wasn't there very long. I wasn't able to sort of do much. Didn't actually feel that was very helpful because I wasn't able to volunteer with the guys who deliver pizzas because they need a minimum 2-week commitment, and I just didn't have that time, sadly. Anyway, the one thing that really stuck out to me was that how normal Kiev and the whole of the country is, and in particular here, an aspect of this was taking photographs on railway stations. By and large, I didn't have any trouble taking photographs on railway stations in Kiev or even Kharkiv. Wasn't questioned, and that is astonishing, absolutely astonishing. I guarantee you, if you were to do the same in Russia, you would get immediately pounced on. It was difficult enough taking photographs at railway stations in Russia, even in peacetime. You were to do that in wartime, you would just be asking for trouble. You'd get interrogated, arrested, your phone would be confiscated, and as a foreigner, Jesus Christ. And that's just the mindset. That is somewhere where, you just see that Russia and Ukraine are completely different. The same system dating back to Soviet days, but how Ukrainians have just changed and opened up and a much freer society, where basically, you can do what you want within reason, unless you do something that's blatantly stupid or against the law or whatever. But I was broadcasting as a co-host from Kiev railway station for hours on end. Nobody questioned me. It wasn't a problem. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't causing a problem for anybody. There were some pictures I took that I wouldn't post. That I didn't want to, even now that possibly I wouldn't post, particularly some in Poland, of trains, freight trains, among other things. And I had a couple of instances. I think I was on the train between Sumy and Kharkiv, and there is a locomotive depot somewhere along there. Forgot the name of the place now. Anyway, I was taking a picture out the train window of a particular locomotive, and a youngish Polish military guy who was just travelling on the train sort of said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I sort of explained, and I said, "I'm not a spy. I just like trains," and he explained, and he was fine after that. And I think I had a problem in Kharkiv. I took a picture of the city from on board a tram going over a river, and one of the locals told me off, and I sort of said I apologised. I'm a foreigner, and it wasn't a problem. But other than that, I was taking photographs on railway stations, particularly in Kiev, and absolutely no problem at all. And that was a real surprise to me. In a wartime country, even in the UK, okay, it's a long time ago, but in the Second World War, if you were, it was completely prohibited to take photographs of trains. And there are relatively few photographs of trains in the UK during the war. There are some, but very few. And that's the reason you would immediately get arrested. It was offensive, and that would be the norm. And it is quite amazing to have a live war where it is not a problem to take photographs on railway stations. That is a complete eye-opener, and is probably the first time in history that's ever happened. I'm not aware of any previous scenario where that has applied, and it just shows you how welcoming and how open Ukrainian society is, in contrast to Russia. And I think Will back me up there. Just the mindset.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Peter. It also shows, what I think that it's in a situation that Ukraine is in, having a normal life is an act of resistance almost. Ukrainians are very committed to having, as much as possible, to having normal lives, to not let the Russians change anything. Yeah. Yes, okay. Alan, and then Alex, and then at some point, well, we're going to shut this down. But this has been a great show, so we're going to let it go on for a little while. Go ahead,
I
Alan.
know you're trying to get out of here, Robin and Will, and Robin and I can continue this discussion tomorrow night. But I did just want to say to listeners, when you cross the border into Ukraine, Ukrainian border guards will say, "Welcome, thank you for coming." When you leave Ukraine to go back to Poland, Ukrainian border guards will say, "Thank you so much." When you're in Ukraine, talking to Ukrainians, uh, it, and Ukrainians under 40 by and large are fluent English speakers, so you'll have no problem having a great conversation. They will all thank you for being in Ukraine, for supporting Ukraine, and for taking part, going through a day in Ukraine as Ukrainians go through it. So I encourage everyone, go to Ukraine. There is nothing that should stop you. Go as far east as Kharkiv, as far south as Odessa. Enjoy Kyiv and just relish Lviv, an extraordinarily beautiful European city. You would think you are in Prague, maybe.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. And this is, as I said, this is, I think, the universal experience of everyone. Ukraine is an open and welcoming society, and it's like I said, once you go once, you'll definitely go back. Alex.
Yeah. So one thing I want to make, following on from Peter, obviously, train enthusiast takes photos. That is fine. You've seen Ukraine on social media. They want the world to see how their reality is. They want people to see what is happening. They want people to stay engaged. So absolutely, if you go to Ukraine, take photos, show how wonderful it is, but also when that air raid comes on, take a video, etc. Post that. They want us to share what they live. But there is one really, really important point I want to make, which is do not effing dare video air defense systems, locations, in action or whatever. Well, just don't do it. So, I mean, I joked earlier, or we had like a bit of a light-hearted thing about how I almost got killed by a Shahed, but I cheaped out and therefore survived by virtue of having my Scottish ancestry. But no, on a serious note, about 6 months after the hotel room I'd been in the first night, but unfortunately on the second stay, it got blown up. There was video of that Shahed hitting my hotel, and I'd be like, yeah, that was literally my room. Here's photos from my room. Here's that hotel. Obviously, that worked out well. That I'm a cheap Scottish bastard at times. But I posted a video on Instagram on my social media, my story of that Shahed blowing up my previous hotel room. About almost 6 months after it actually happened, and I posted it, and someone I know in the Ukrainian community who follows me said, you cannot do that, you have to delete that, you're posting air defense. And just like, this was almost 6 months ago to the day. By the way, I don't know if you met him, Alan, but by the way, a friend of mine actually does air defense planning for Odessa. So I checked it with him, like literally the Ukrainian Navy, and like, yeah, that's cool. But that was the point. Like, a Ukrainian, someone I know, I consider a friend, is like, you can't post that. And I had to be like, it's 6 months after the fact. If you know how air defense in Odessa works, you know that 6 months out of date data is fucking useless. Goes back to my previous point about time. And also I checked it. But that's the thing, like a peer, a friend, its immediate reaction to a video in Ukraine of air defense on my account is, what the fuck are you doing?
And that's an important thing to remember. The other thing, another that I know people have run into is, I don't know why, but you get in massive trouble if you photograph the border crossing when you're going into Ukraine. So don't do that.
Never done that. But I would just say, when it comes to the air defense side,
But
my
that's even true
reaction.
here in Australia. If you take out your phone while you're standing in line to get checked in for immigration and customs, there's a big sign that says you're going to get in trouble for that.
Yeah, so there aren't big signs around air defense for obvious reasons. Just don't fucking do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, Peter, go ahead. And then, like I said, at some point we're gonna have to get out of here. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, when I stayed in a hotel in sort of central Kharkiv, and I just booked online. And when I got there, outside, the hotel itself was fine; it had been repaired, but there was clearly a rocket had landed outside the hotel, and the adjacent buildings, the glass had been blown out, and they were still not back in operation. And I was angry when I saw it. It really annoyed me to see the audacity that the Russians had to just bomb a European city. And of course, going around Kharkiv, a certain proportion of the windows were blown out, and there were buildings that had been hit and stuff like that. And this was in August, and I asked the hotel staff, well, when did that happen? And they said, oh, well, it was last October. And the street had been repaired, but some of the adjacent buildings hadn't. The hotel had clearly would have suffered damage, I think. I'm sure it would have done, and had been repaired and come back into service. But there were things like that you could see things were not quite right. And that to me, that wouldn't deter me, but it might make some people nervous. To me, it just made me angry and more determined and more wanting to support the Ukrainian people, because they shouldn't have to be living in a center of a city and have to deal with bloody rocket attacks. So there are things like that, but there are bits of that in Kiev. I think there's one of the central energy headquarters, which is right outside Kiev station. I'm not saying giving anything away there, and that had come under attack, and some of the windows were broken. But in Kiev, things were mostly normal. That wasn't quite the same in Kharkiv. There was more evidence that they were nearer the front line. Sadly, just a victim of where they are geographically. I think they're about 24 kilometers from the Russian border. So they sort of get the hard end of the missiles and rocket and Shaheeds and that. And I think, certainly when I was on the train following night from Kharkiv to Kiev, when we're going through Poltava, there were drones in the air over Poltava that night as I was on the train. They didn't hit any of the trains, but it was, it was sobering knowing that, you were under attack by Russian drones when you were on your train, and they were in sort of going through the area, and there was multiple air raid sirens I heard in Kiev, Sumy, and Kharkiv, and people sort of reacted to them differently, and I just sort of I didn't know, not been in air raid sirens before, so I sort of took my lead from what the locals were doing and sort of kind of just did what they did. And the hotel said, draw the curtains at night and things like that, to protect from the glass. They're quite heavy curtains, things like that. So just common sense things, really. But yeah, I'd 100% go to Ukraine. Don't be afraid. Don't fear. There's an outside chance you may be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you may get struck by a rocket, but you may get run over by a bus in Baltimore or London or wherever the hell you are. Something crazy may happen there. Somebody may go on a rampage with a gun. You just, it's dangerous to get out of bed. If you're not going to take any risks in life, you'd never get out of bed. So, go support them, let them know that you're, and if you haven't been there in particular, then I'm sure you'll find it very rewarding. And I think you're 100% you'll learn a lot, and hopefully you can go there and actually try and do something to help, because there's a lot of NGOs and a lot of people, even if you're going around delivering pizzas to villages or whatever, or trying to do anything, from the various NGOs and charities that are involved in trying to help. But I think that they do want the moral support, and just to know that they're not forgotten and not ignored. Although they are by our stupid politicians. But I think that's why it's important to let them know that people, the general population, and people like you and I, haven't forgotten them and haven't ignored them. And there we are. That's what I would say anyway, and I'm sure the others on here would agree with me on that. So thanks very much. That's probably enough for me rambling on, and pass back over to you, Robin and Will.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Yeah, and I was told by a number of Ukrainians to, if people can go and volunteer specifically, it's good, but even just showing up and spending your money, you're supporting the Ukrainian economy. They're obviously, tourism is not as big as it was before the full-scale invasion. So just going there and having a beer on the square in Lviv, having a dinner, that's also an important way of supporting them. So if you're not able to volunteer, don't feel as though that there's something wrong with going. You're still going to be very welcome, and you're still doing you're still providing, as Peter's saying, moral support, and you're helping the economy. So it's all good. Alex.
Yeah, quick follow up. I mean, you can volunteer and be a tourist, but I'd also say I don't think I've heard it value for money in Ukraine. Like if you in Lviv, like the top seafood restaurant in town, they basically have a breakfast option where you can have shakshuka, full English, waffles and pancakes, choose whatever you want, with a glass of orange juice and a glass of cava or prosecco, for like £6. So like $8. So best restaurant in town, fancy brunch on the square, sitting outside looking at the most beautiful part of the city. What do you get for $8 at a restaurant in the UK, in America, for brunch? And I know in Beaver Creek, Colorado, I'd be lucky to get a Coca-Cola for that on the mountain.
Yeah, it's true. Also, the best coffee in the world you get in Ukraine. It's incredible. I've gotten very spoiled now. But you go into a coffee shop and get a flat white or cappuccino, whatever. Get an espresso. You're going to pay $1 for it, and it's going to be better than anything you get in a shishi coffee shop in New York for 6 times the price.
Okay, so
yeah,
saying the best coffee in the world, I'm expecting Will to start representing for the Aussies right here, but God knows why.
Well, I did mention a flat white because that came from. I was hoping to inoculate that with mentioning flat whites. Go ahead,
but
Will.
when we all met, like the first time all of us got together, and obviously, I mean, Alan's still here. I mean, Chuck's not in the room, but like that restaurant, like Did you see that gold espresso machine? Like
Oh
we
yeah,
have
it's
like
very bougie.
Yes, yes,
it's like this is like only one of 20 of these espresso machines in the world. It's the best espresso, and we have it. It's just like it's just bizarre. It's like of
yeah.
all the problems that you have, it's just like we're just gonna solve it by making the best fucking coffee there is.
That's right. And I'm not going to get too started with this. Will and I next week will be telling you about restaurants and things, but we went to a ribs place, Will and with our friends Rustic and Yorko and Chuck and Alan. Oh my God, it was incredible. It's if you go to Ukraine, you are going to eat better than you've ever eaten in your life. And the one last thing, one of the things you can do, we have an interview up on Spotify. You can go to Ukrainian Catholic University, UKU, in Lviv, and you can do a 3, 4, 6 week intensive in Ukrainian language and culture. Lexicon and I have both done that, and a number of other people, and it's a wonderful. I always stay at UKU when I'm in Lviv because I just love the place so much. And that's also a wonderful way to support the country to get to get to really get some knowledge of the culture and the language. So those are also options. Will, over to you.
Yeah, and I think we'll cover this again next week on some things about traveling, eating, and all that sort of stuff. And the key from everything you might have gleaned from everybody speaking here is there's a war on, so don't be an idiot traveler. But I give that advice to people generally: don't be an idiot traveler generally, right? Whether there's a war on or not, because most people who get in trouble traveling do it because they're idiots, not because of the conditions in which that are going on inside the country they're at. And that's just essentially a good rule to follow anyway. And I'll note that people that were berating me while I was in country about traveling to a war zone were diaspora from Ukraine. All of them were, complaining. Don't go there. You're taking up resources. You're taking up space. You're trouble while the war's on. All these people were from America, and
And not one single Ukrainian ever said anything
Ukraine
like
from
that.
Ukraine, including the place where I took one of the photographs, where I'm sitting with Alex having a beer. The whoever.
And me.
No,
Wait a
but
minute.
no.
We were all.
This is the day you stayed home because you were tired. Um,
Oh, okay.
but I'm sitting here having a beer with Alex. Took a photo and sent it, and I got berated about being in wasting resources and all that sort of stuff. And immediately, whoever runs social media for the Pravda Brewing Company immediately said that's bullshit. Come to Ukraine. Spend, you're not taking away resources. There's plenty of capacity right now, and you're always welcome to visit us. So yeah, that's the thing. Just recognize that you're going to a place that's at war, but go to the place right now because you can, even though it's at war, because you're not unsafe generally, unless lightning strikes, like Alex said, and or Peter said, and and they want you there. The people who are in Ukraine literally want you to come now. They have had a
And it's a wonderful
yeah, it's
Like
just a
place.
really nice place to go generally, and it'll enrich your life. And you, I don't talk about prices and how much you can save, whatever like that. The key is their tourism is down phenomenally drastically since the war started because most common people say, "Oh, can't go there. There's a war on." And you'll really be welcomed. And we'll talk about food and getting around and more stuff next week. But despite being smart about it, there's no reason you shouldn't travel to Ukraine if you want to do so.
yeah,
That's me, Rob.
I can't emphasize that more. And actually, the more I think about it, the more obvious this should be. Like United 24, which was set up at the order of President Zelensky, invited 5 NATO fellows to come to their first. It's like, we want you to come. And unfortunately, Nell the Weaver couldn't make it, but 4 of us could. That's actually strategic messaging. Like United 24, their job is one, bringing money, but it's strategic level messaging. And the messaging, I don't know, I saw it is like, we want NAFO accounts from, back at the time, who I guess had some reach.
Yeah, that's
So
a
it's like, if we were a burden on the resources that Ukraine has, why the fuck would they be asking from, back at that period of time, years and years ago, high impact NAFO accounts? They wanted us. They wanted people to be here who they knew were their allies and friends. Okay, NATO, you've ticked the box with that one, and they want the story to be seen far and wide. So I guess that's why they went from some of the accounts which just had a bit more reach back many years ago than maybe we do now. I don't know, but United 24 is under the command of President Zelensky. If we were if the message was foreigners are a burden on their country, why the fuck would they be inviting,
Yeah, that's a great point, Alice. And they certainly, if they didn't want foreigners coming, there would be government directives and government announcements and things. And there certainly has not been anything even remotely like
and
that.
I think this goes down to lower levels, Zigger's poor. Like I've met those guys outside of it. They're like, but we would actually like to have a, one of our, foreign donors who's a big support of us. Would you come out and actually see what we do? And it's like, fuck yeah, I'll come out and do it. So if they didn't think, I mean, I think many people know I love Zigger's Poor as an organization as well. But I was like, no, we want to show what we do, and it's like we want someone from outside to go home with it and explain to the people at home. It's like, no, this is not propaganda. I was literally in the truck. I was literally sleeping with the units. I was literally doing the same stuff they were. This is not propaganda. I literally lived it. I had my own bloody phone. Actually, I didn't use my phone. I used my GoPro, but I had it. So they want people to see who they are and why they should be supported. And as everyone said, if you go there, you will go back again because you'll realize how wonderful they are. And that's why they want to show who they are, because they know. It's just like, okay, this seems to work. We'll just show the world who we are. The world seems to like it, and that means they support us. So why don't we just try and show more of the world who we are? Because that just seems to work for us. Unsurprisingly, does not work for the Russians.
No, and to follow on from what you said, having lived and worked in Russia for 14 years, I guarantee you I was in more danger most of the time I was in Russia up till 2016 than I was in Ukraine, despite the fact that there's a war on. So yeah, that's true. And if you think you get good cachet for visiting, if you're from America or Britain, if you're from Australia, you wouldn't believe the reception you'll get because you are a long way from home, and people can't believe that Australians even know where Ukraine is, let alone would travel there right now. I was, I could have eaten out on that multiple times.
Super duper pro tip. So a friend of mine, not Ukrainian, but has been there for a while, lives there, does drone stuff there. Was massively speeding. He needed to get some drones to a polygon for a test. Got pulled over because they still have regular police and laws. It's like, no, most Ukrainians drive like psychopaths, but this was like, he was just like, yeah, even I was driving badly by Ukrainian standards. And they pulled him over, and it's like, what the fuck, he gets by in Ukrainian, doesn't speak it. I don't know, Alan may have even met him. I'm not sure how that panned out. But then they're like, what are you doing? And he just opened up the back of his car, and he had 20-inch Ghost Squadron leaders in it. It was like, I'm going to go fly at a polygon. And he was like, yeah, you're good. Do you want an escort? So, good thing to have. I've actually got a friend of mine in the UK, regular attendee at Ukrainian rallies, but he's Portuguese. And he runs a little outfit in the UK where they fundraise and they make drones and send them to a particular unit because one in the group has a family member in the unit. So they just make drones specifically for this unit. So a bit nepotistic, but fuck it, they're doing a good job. When he goes into Ukraine, he's just sort of I always bring a drone with me. Because it's like, if people go, what are you doing? Where are you coming to train? It's like, I want to make weapons for you. That seems to be viewed positively. Yeah, so it was a it seemed my mate who's flying some drones was like, yeah, I just keep one of these in the back of the car now just in case I get pulled over. It's like, yeah, I'm going to do drone testing. Look at my drone. Like, yeah, fuck it, you're fine. But yeah, maybe this should be like a fundraiser that something does with Wild Hornets. It's like, this is your Wild Hornets get out of jail free drone. Just put it in the back of your car. It's like, I'm delivering it to a unit. I promise. It's like, you're in Lviv.
I'm going to stick with the Australian passport.
Hey, whatever works. Okay, guys. This is terrific. I unfortunately I really do have to get out of here.
Yeah, remember
Will,
when
do
you
you want to
asked me?
carry on?
Remember when you asked me, can we take 20 minutes and talk about traveling to Ukraine? Because I'm
Right,
not sure we have
exactly.
enough content, but yeah, we'll do it again next week, and Alan can do it with you tomorrow, and you'll still have plenty of to talk about.
That's great. The non-resident branch of the Ukrainian
Ministry of
tourist
Tourism.
service. We're going to get people. That's exactly Ministry of Tourism. That's it. Yeah. Prince, darling.
I have a request.
Yes.
I would like Will and Robin and Alan to be in Kiev together on a Sunday and go to liturgy at the cathedral, hopefully when Yuri's there. And
Wow, that is a big ask.
Boy, Will, for
somebody,
you, we'll probably
You
even
know,
do it.
Will
You
will
know
get
that.
struck down by a lightning bolt just before the doors. Right?
Exactly. Just going in there and getting that
Yeah,
video.
I mean,
It was like,
and you know,
oh, it
Trump will probably
burns,
take
it
a hit too.
burns.
you
He might
know, he
survive it
went.
though.
Will kept Heather in church porn the whole time we
Yeah.
were in Ukraine.
No,
So
he went to the cathedral for me and found out what Yuri's name is. There is I'm not kidding.
And spoke to a nun to
He
do it.
spoke to a nun and left a note for the deacon at the cathedral in Kiev. I appreciate Will so very much, and I have been complimented on my ability to get an atheist to go to a cathedral.
Well, clearly he's a good guy because I would have expected him to be struck down by lightning at the front. So maybe he's not as bad a dude as we all think he is.
No, I really appreciate it, but no, I'm sitting here watching a service that is happening tonight, and I'm gonna say,
of course you are.
I'm gonna send you something to interpret, Robin, because I'm like, I didn't know anybody could talk that fast. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh, this is, by the way, folks. This is the Catholic Hour with Prince Heather.
No, it's not. I happened to cross it. It happened actually several hours ago. It's like the evening before Epiphany. This morning they blessed the water. Yeah.
Oh, right. That's right.
This morning they blessed the water from the Jordan. It was It was very interesting too.
Yeah, the Eastern Church is I mean they've got the pageantry thing down and the mysticism, but we'll have to, that's another, that their will is another topic that we spoke with Taras Timo from Ukrainian Catholic University about this a little bit, about the religious background and the importance of religious belief in Ukraine. But it's certainly something that we could address again at some point. But in the meantime, I think, well, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and then I think we're going to shut down because I have. Well, never mind.
Yeah, no, that's it. I don't have anything else breaking to tell you today. So thanks everybody for coming to Accidental Ukrainian. I know there's a lot of Venezuela and a lot of other spaces that damn Nate Vance was out there stealing our audience. But thanks for everybody for coming in as usual and finding out what's going on with Ukraine, and hopefully finding out something you can do for Ukraine today, as you should do every day. The regular team will be on this afternoon when Mockers gets up for the Boom Report. And then, of course, 24 hours from now, you'll also have Robin and Alan's regular show tomorrow morning. So watch the news, help out Ukraine with information you get here. Call your representative and ask why you're not doing more for Ukraine, especially since the time is right. Russia's never been weaker. And if we really apply the pressure, early this year, we could be looking at very good things later in this year, I reckon. So with that, I'll say Slava Ukraini, and see you for me,
Herojam
not
Slava.
until Friday. Slava Ukraini.
Head Slava.
Heroin
Herojam
Slava.
Slava.
Slava
Slava
Nazi.
Slava.
Smrti
Mirpaham
Raham.
and
Thanks.
do Paramohi.
Do Paramoha to victory and skoro pobачимось. Thanks.
Skoro pobачимось.
Pabachimus.